Chapter 71. Sometimes, luck couldn't be stopped. Tang Xiu wandered in the medicinal herbs market stall area for nearly an hour and bought 2 precious medicinal herbs at a very low price. Although their preciousness couldn't be compared with the blood spiral shell, it was definitely a good thing for him now. Eldest brother Tang, do you really have medical skills? Long Zhenglin finally couldn't help but ask after holding back for a long time. I know a bit, Tang Xiu said lightly. You're worthy to be my eldest brother. You really have a lot of skills. Long Zhenglin praised. Now I really wonder if there's anything you can't do. But why did you buy these medicinal herbs? Don't tell me you're not feeling well? Tang Xiu glanced at him and said, I'm going to face the college entrance test soon, and the pressure of studying is huge. So I'm going to buy some medicinal herbs to supplement my body. How about I give you a prescription? You can buy the medicinal herbs according to the prescription and drink it when you go back. It'll cure your illness. My illness? Long Zhenglin rolled his eyes and snappily said, Eldest brother Tang, my body is great. What's wrong with me? Tang Xiu said lightly, if a man's skill in bed is not good, then he's sick. Especially those who can't hold on for more than 3 minutes, they're seriously sick. Forget it. If you don't admit it, then I don't need to trouble myself. Long Zhenglin was stunned. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that Tang Xiu would be able to see through his most private affairs. He indeed had this kind of problem. It was fine before, at least he could hold on for 7 or 8 minutes because of his vigorous blood and vigor. But recently, it was hard for him to hold on for more than 3 minutes due to having too much sexual intercourse. Eldest brother? No, big brother. You're my blood brother. Hurry up and give me this prescription. I'll exchange anything for it. A charming smile was outlined on the corner of Tang Xiu's mouth. The reason why he gave Long Zhenglin the prescription and asked him to buy the medicinal herbs was to send him away from his side. Otherwise, this guy would be like Tang Seng, a long-winded chatterbox that made him depressed. Kidney deficiency. Long Zhenglin had this problem, and it was a serious kidney deficiency. People with severe kidney deficiency would definitely not be able to have sexual intercourse. It was a simple matter for him to treat this kind of illness. Go find a pen and paper. Long Zhenglin, without demur, immediately ran to the stall on the side. A moment later, he came in front of Tang Xiu with a pen and paper. His eager look made Tang Xiu feel that it was funny. After writing a prescription, Tang Xiu sent Long Zhenglin away and continued to stroll around the stalls. As for Gong Dalong, who had been silently following behind him, Tang Xiu was not in the mood to pay attention to him for now. He needed medicinal herbs now, and he needed to buy a large number of precious medicinal herbs at a low price. What a pity! His good luck seemed to have run out all of a sudden. After a while, he did not find any other precious medicinal herbs. With a disappointed look, he changed his route and walked toward the shop area. Every shop, every display case. Tang Xiu observed very carefully, not letting go of any kind of medicinal herbs. However, the prices that could enter his eyes were outrageously high, and he could not afford them now. The price was slightly lower, and he could still afford them, but they could not enter his eyes. Night fell. The street lights of the medicinal herbs market had been lit up, and many medicinal herbs shops had begun to take samples. Tang Xiu strolled around. Because Long Zhenglin was not noisy at the side, his mood was calm. Tang Xiu looked up and saw that the lights were still on, but the medicinal herbs store didn't seem to have any intention of closing up. He then walked inside. Welcome. What can I do for the 2 gentlemen? A young shop assistant wearing a cheongsam greeted him with a professional smile on his face. Tang Xiu said, I'm just looking around. You don't need to greet me. If I see a medicinal herb that I fancy, I'll call you first. Alright, please take your time, sir. Tang Xiu did not directly look at the medicinal herbs on the display case, but first looked at the antique decoration of the medicinal herbs shop. He found that the layout of this shop was very interesting. It seemed that someone deliberately arranged it to form a good feng shui layout. He was very familiar with arrays, especially this simplest feng shui layout. He could see through the whole layout at a glance. When his eyes fell on the manekiniko on the counter, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This shop is interesting. Smooth sailing brings wealth and treasures. As the saying goes, there is a master in every profession. In today's world, there was feng shui. Although most of them pretended to be feng shui masters to swindle people, there were still some who had real skills. After all, feng shui was a treasure handed down by the ancestors. After thousands of years of inheritance, it was understandable for powerful people to arrange this kind of feng shui layout. Subsequently, Ten Xiu cast his eyes on the various medicinal herbs in the display case. To his surprise, he found a hundreds-of-years-old wild ginseng. But seeing the price next to the wild ginseng, his mouth could not help but twitch a few times. 7 digits. A hundreds-of-years-old wild ginseng was actually sold for 7 digits. Tan Xiu could not help but think that if he sold all the spiritual herbs in his herb garden in the immortal world on Earth, he would probably be able to buy the entire Earth, right? As he slowly observed, the disappointment on Tan Xiu's face became more and more intense. It was the same situation he encountered in other medicinal herb shops. The slightly better prices were ridiculously expensive, and the cheaper ones were not worth his attention. Could it be? Was he going to return home like this? He was a little unwilling. After looking through all the medicinal herbs in the display case, his footsteps stopped in front of a display case. He looked at a spiritual fruit inside with a strange expression. Holy dragon fruit? There was actually a holy dragon fruit in this world? Tan Xiu secretly suppressed the shock in his heart. His eyes swept over the price and he almost cursed out loud. The price of this holy dragon fruit was only $8,888. What a waste of natural resources! What a waste of natural resources! This holy dragon fruit was a holy fruit that countless powerhouses in the immortal world wanted to obtain. If it was used to refine medicinal pills, it could absolutely be used to refine the best primordial chaos pill in the immortal world. One must know that a primordial chaos pill could make an ordinary person ascend to the immortal world. If it was given to the lowest level immortal, he would probably be able to reach the golden immortal stage in a short time, becoming an existence that countless immortals would admire. Tan Xiu estimated that all the precious medicinal herbs in the entire medicinal herb shop were multiplied by 10,000, but it was still not comparable to the value of this holy dragon fruit. Miss. Tan Xiu waved to the salesgirl who greeted him before. The salesgirl leisurely came with a smile and warmly said, "What can I do for you, sir?" Tan Xiu pointed to the holy dragon fruit and said, "I'll take it." The salesgirl said with a smile, "You really have a good eye, sir. This fruit is called the snake dragon fruit. If you use it to decoct medicine, it will have a great effect on the human body. Unfortunately, this spiritual fruit is very difficult to obtain. My boss had to go through a lot of connections to bring one back from Qinghai. That's right, it also has a miraculous feature, that is, it won't rot for a short time if it's placed in a jade box." Tan Xiu said, "Give it to me. I'll pay for it now." "All right, sir, please come with me." After a simple transaction, the holy dragon fruit completely belonged to Tan Xiu. After obtaining such a precious holy fruit, Tan Xiu also lost the mood to continue strolling. After leaving the medicinal herb market, Tan Xiu looked at Gong Dalong, who was following behind him, and lightly asked, "Do you have a place to stay?" Gong Dalong said, "Yes. But I don't have much time, so I'm afraid I have to hurry back." Tan Xiu nodded. He casually stopped a taxi on the street and took Gong Dalong back to Southgate Town. He didn't want to care about Jia Ruidao's matter. He only wanted to see Gong Dalong, and it was Gong Dalong's attitude. Inside the villa, Tan Xiu saw that the house had been cleaned, and he was quite satisfied with the cleaning staff's work. He signaled Gong Dalong to sit on the sofa, and then directly sat on the opposite sofa. Tell me the cause and effect." Gong Dalong forced a smile and said, "Actually, the one who stirred up the trouble first was my junior brother, Jia Yele. He's also my master's son. My master has 3 disciples. I'm his eldest disciple, the second is Zhang Taichun, and the third is Jia Yele. Some time ago, my junior brother gambled with others on the gambling table. But the result was that he was schemed against by others. Not only did he lose all his money, but he also lost several properties under his name. In order to win, he looked for his second junior brother, Zhang Taichun. On gambling skills, second junior brother's level is much better than his junior brother's. As a result, second junior brother was also schemed against. Not only did he lose all his property, but he also borrowed tens of millions from the other party. Similarly, he also lost tens of millions of yuan. Because they had no money to repay the debt, second junior brother and junior brother braced themselves and told this matter to master. Originally, my master intended to take out tens of millions of yuan to pay off their gambling debts, and then drop the matter. However, my junior brother didn't want to and pestered master for several days, asking master to help him get back his face. Unable to bear his pleading, master went to gamble with the other party, and the result was. Tan Xiao interrupted Gong Dalong's words and said, "The other party was very powerful, and your master was far from being his opponent. And then he lost miserably?" Gong Dalong said bitterly, "My master lost miserably." Tan Xiao said, "Since his skill was not as good as the other party, then give up. Why did he ask me for help?" Gong Dalong said, "On the gambling table, even a gambling expert will lose his mind once his eyes turn red from losing. My master was incited by the other party and was swayed by his emotions. He then bet my master's wife's relic, the only jade pendant left for master. He lost again? He lost." Gong Dalong clenched his fists and bowed his head. Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "So, even if your master regretted it, he had no choice but to continue gambling with the other party. He didn't want to win back the money he lost, but only wanted to win back the only relic left by your master's wife?" "Yeah." Gong Dalong nodded. "As a result, my master borrowed a lot of money and gambled with the other party a few times every day, but he lost miserably every time. Master had no choice but to ask you for help." Chapter 72. Gamblers would lose their money like a bottomless pit. Even if they were used to being filthy rich, they still couldn't afford to bet on the gambling table. Tang Xiao had personally witnessed gamblers losing their entire family's fortune. He had also witnessed gamblers selling their children, wives, and elders. Jia Ruidao didn't lose his life in gambling, which is already a blessing in misfortune. I already know about the matter between you and master. If there's nothing else, you can leave now." Gong Dalong was stunned. He didn't expect that after listening to the whole story, Tan Xiao would unexpectedly ask him to leave. What did he mean by this? Did he refuse to help? "Grandmaster Tang, Tan Xiao interrupted him and said, "Didn't I express it clearly enough? I really can't help you in this matter." Gong Dalong asked with difficulty, "Why?" "My master said that your gambling skills are better than his. If you are given a little guidance and training, your gambling skills will be much better than my master." "Let me correct you a few points," Tan Xiao said with a smile. "First, I'm not interested in gambling, and I have no interest in the training you said. Second, if you want to be a professional gambler, you must be mentally prepared to lose all your fortune. Third, there's only 1 month left before I take the college entrance test. Not to mention that it's impossible for the school to give me a vacation. I won't be able to explain it to my mother." Gong Dalong looked anxious as he knelt in front of Tan Xiao and begged, "Grandmaster Tang, I beg you, please help my master. As long as you're willing to help me, not only will I offer all my fortune to you, but I'll also be willing to serve you after I take care of my master." Looking at Gong Dalong, Tan Xiao suddenly remembered his old slave in the immortal world. That loyal and devoted old slave followed him in order to repay his kindness. He didn't know what happened to him after he was plotted against. Gong Dalong spoke again, "Grandmaster Tang, I'll be responsible for solving the school's matter and your mother's problem. I won't make things difficult for you." Tan Xiao stared blankly and asked with a confused expression, "Can you solve it?" Gong Dalong confidently said, "I can. If I can't solve it, I won't bother you anymore." Tan Xiao stood up and said, "If that's the case, I'll wait." Gong Dalong was overjoyed. He originally thought that it would take some effort to get Tan Xiao to agree. He didn't expect Tan Xiao to agree so easily. Instantly, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. However, seeing that Tan Xiao had the intention to send him off, he immediately said, "Please wait for my news, Grandmaster Tang. It's getting late, so I won't bother you any longer. Take care." Tan Xiao nodded calmly. The imperial capital at night was unusually bustling. A white Porsche Cayenne shuttled through the traffic. In the driver's seat, Kang Xia was listening to the melodious light music while thinking about something in her mind. Ring, ring, ring. The ringtone of her cell phone interrupted her thoughts. As she put on her Bluetooth headset, she answered the call and said, "This is Kang Xia. Tan Xiu's information has been sent to your email. However, the information you've provided is too little. I've screened it, and there are 2 people who meet your conditions." "All right." Kang Xia took off the headset and turned the steering wheel. She turned right at the intersection ahead and stopped at the roadside after moving forward for 100 meters. Immediately after, she grabbed the laptop from the front seat and quickly opened the email, silently looking at it. Quickly, her expression turned a bit strange. One of them was a timber businessman named Tan Xiu, but she directly excluded him. But the second one turned out to be a high school student? A former genius turned into a waste after a car accident? Kang Xia's black brows tightly wrinkled as a thoughtful expression flashed in her eyes. If not for this comment, she would have directly given up the idea in her heart. After a moment, she put the laptop back on the front seat and decided to go to Star City herself. She dialed the phone again and said, "Andy, help me book a flight ticket to Star City tomorrow morning." "No problem," the sensual voice sounded. However, she hesitated for a moment and curiously asked, "Boss, what are you going to do in Star City? Don't tell me you're going to see that Tan Xiu?" An arc curled on the corner of Kang Xia's mouth. A smile rippled as she said, "Haven't you guys been quarreling about being bored recently? I really want to smell a trace of opportunity. If this trip to Star City is successful, then I really want to congratulate you. You're about to start working." "Hooray!" The sensual voice sounded pleasantly surprised. As the saying goes, the spring is the best time to plan for a year, and the morning is the best time to plan for a day. Early in the morning, the bright and beautiful sun shone on the earth, bringing warmth to the world. Tan Xiu, who had been absent from school for many days, finally rushed to school. As he entered class 10, he saw a messy classroom with many students gathered together and chatting. Yuan Chuling, on the other hand, was silently sitting in the classroom, looking at the textbook in his hand. "Has this kid changed his nature?" Tan Xiu muttered inwardly as he strode toward his seat. The moment Tan Xiu entered the classroom, the originally messy scene turned quiet. Almost all the students were aware of Tan Xiu's arrival, and their eyes were fixedly staring at Tan Xiu. "This extremely daring guy actually came to class today. Isn't he afraid of being taught a lesson by Miss Han?" A voice suddenly sounded, and it immediately caused a clamor. "Yeah, Miss Han's mood is obviously bad these days." She even stared at Tan Xiu's seat many times during class. "I reckon that Miss Han can't wait to drive this guy out of the class. I've seen arrogant people, but I've never seen such an arrogant one." He came back as if nothing happened, but Miss Han was angered by him. "He's really annoying. A rat's poop stinks a pot of porridge. What bad luck. Why is this guy in our class? If I were Miss Han, I'd directly take a broom and drive him out. Ignorant and incompetent." Tan Xiu's hearing was extremely sharp, and he could clearly hear the discussion of every student in the class. However, he didn't care. Mediocre people were mediocre, and there was no point in saying more. Just like that wise saying, "The world slandered me, deceived me, humiliated me, laughed at me, belittled me, despised me, hated me, and lied to me. How to deal with it? Just endure it, let it be, avoid it, endure it, respect it, and ignore it. Wait a few years and you'll see how it turns out." Tan Xiu liked this saying very much. If you bicker with a fool, you'll also become a fool. He didn't want to be a fool, so he directly chose to ignore it. "Boss, you're here." Yuan Chuling finally noticed Tan Xiu's arrival and immediately stood up with a face full of excitement. Tan Xiu didn't expect that Yuan Chuling would have such a big reaction. He patted his shoulder, hinting him to sit down, and then sat on his own seat. However, what puzzled him was that Qing Yannan, who was sitting in front of him, turned around and asked in a low voice that only the 3 of them could hear, "Tan Xiu, were you the one who killed those organ traffickers?" Tan Xiu pretended to be confused and asked back, "What do you mean? Why don't I understand?" Qingyan frowned and said, "Wasn't it you? My big sister said that it was a young man, and you've been absent from class for the past few days. I thought you were the hero who helped the weak and eliminated the evil for the people." "Have you read too many martial arts novels?" Tan Xiao said with a smile. Qing Yannan's pretty face blushed as she hurriedly turned around. Yuan Chuling glanced at Qing Yannan's back. Then he approached Tan Xiao and whispered with a grateful expression, "Boss, thank you." Tan Xiao stared blankly for a moment before he suddenly understood and whispered, "You know about it?" Yuan Chuling nodded and said, "Mom told me everything. I knew it was you who did it according to her description. Boss, I'll keep this friendship at the bottom of my heart. In any case, I'll be your follower in the future. You can't get rid of me." "Go to hell." Tan Xiao cursed with a smile. Amidst the laughter, the classroom quieted down again. Han Qingwu, the teacher in charge of Class 10, entered the classroom with a cold face. When she saw Tan Xiao, she immediately said in a deep voice, "Come out, Tan Xiao." Tan Xiao raised his hand to touch the bridge of his nose. He could tell from Han Qingwu's harsh tone that she didn't come with good intentions. Glancing at Yuan Chuling, whose face was full of sympathy, Tan Xiao stepped on Yuan Chuling's foot under the table and walked outside amidst Yuan Chuling's screams of pain. In the corridor, Han Qingwu's face was gloomy as she stared at Tan Xiao. She didn't speak for a long time. As time passed by, Tan Xiao finally couldn't bear it anymore and broke the silence. He forced a smile and said, "Miss Han, you called me out in a hurry the moment you saw me. Don't tell me that you want to see flowers on my face?" Upon hearing it, Han Qingwu suddenly got angry and angrily said, "You still have the nerve to smile and have a glib tongue in front of me? Believe it or not, I'll deal with you immediately. Tell me, why did you lie to me a few days ago? It's fine that you skipped class, but you even made me personally escort you out of school. That's simply outrageous." Tan Xiao's face was full of black lines. He originally thought that Han Qingwu was angry at him for skipping class, but he didn't expect that she would take it to heart that he made her escort him out of school. Because he was in the wrong, Tan Xiao smiled embarrassedly and said, "Well, Miss Han, there's a reason for it. I left in a hurry at that time and didn't even have time to say goodbye to you. It's indeed my fault. You have a big belly and a big heart, so please don't lower yourself to the level of an honest student like me." "You have a big belly and a big heart." Han Qingwu rolled her eyes at Tan Xiao and almost said those contemptuous words out loud. He's an honest student? If he were an honest student, then there would be no dishonest student in the world. Which honest student would dare to blatantly skip class? What's more hateful is that he even dared to let the head teacher escort him to skip class. "Well, since you said there's a reason, I'd like to hear it. What's the reason that makes you skip class so naturally?" Han Qingwu didn't intend to let Tan Xiao go. She thought about the grievance she felt in her heart these days and felt that it was necessary to give Tan Xiao some eye drops. Now, there was not much time left before the college entrance exam. She must ensure that Tan Xiao would review his homework well and get a good result in the exam. Chapter 73. "Miss Han, when you went to the supermarket to buy water, I happened to meet an acquaintance. That acquaintance was suffering from a serious illness. It just so happened that I know a bit of Chinese medicine, so he pulled me away. I've been treating him for the past few days. Finally, the heavens won't disappoint those who persevere, and I managed to cure his illness yesterday." Tan Xiao had long thought of a countermeasure. His face didn't blush nor did his heart skip a beat when he lied. Han Qingwu angrily said, "Nonsense. Even if you're going to treat someone's illness, you don't need to be in such a hurry, right? That's not right. When did you learn Chinese medicine? I think you're just running your mouth. You can't believe a word of it." Tan Xiao cried out that he was wrongly accused. "Miss Han, a man of his word has always been true. Even if I deceive the world, I won't dare to deceive you. If you don't believe me, I'll give you his phone number. You can directly call him and ask him." "Really?" Han Qingwu was skeptical this time. Tan Xiao straightened his chest as he said with a resolute and decisive tone, "It's more true than real gold. That's right, if I tell you his name, you might have heard it. He's called Chen Jizhong, a businessman. Also, I have a witness. You should have heard of Long Hanwen, right? The long group is his family's. Han Qingwu rolled her eyes. Just a moment ago, she was skeptical about Tan Xiu's words. But in the blink of an eye, that trace of trust vanished into thin air. Chen Zhizhong? Long Hanwen? Of course, she had heard of these two people. Not only her, but 99% of the people in the entire Star City had heard of these two people. But who was Tan Xiu? How could an ordinary high school student possibly know such a high and mighty figure? However, she called Tan Xiu out because she wanted to vent the resentment in her heart and correct Tan Xiu's learning attitude. Therefore, regardless of whether Tan Xiu was spouting nonsense or not, she didn't intend to pursue the matter any further. Tan Xiu, I can't be bothered whether what you said is true or not. In any case, you better remember this. In the last 3 days before the college entrance examination, I will invite many teachers in the school to come up with a set of exam papers for you to simulate the exam. If you don't do as well as you did last time, the school might cancel your college entrance examination qualification. As expected, results speak for themselves. Tan Xiu snickered in his heart and repeatedly issued military orders to Han Qingwu. If you don't have a diamond, don't do porcelain work. With his level, he was naturally not afraid of a mock exam. Back in the classroom, Tan Xiu saw Yuan Chuling winking at him, his eyes full of ridicule. Boss, after you skipped class that day, did you send a message to Miss Han? What was the content? Making Miss Han blush in front of the whole class? That day. Tan Xiu thought for a moment and then couldn't help laughing. Looking at Yuan Chuling's gossipy face, he secretly shook his head and no longer paid attention to him. To cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, to reach the second stage of the skin polishing stage, a lot of medicinal materials were needed, among which several precious main medicinal materials were not found yet. Therefore, Tan Xiu could only put aside his cultivation and strive to collect all the medicinal materials in the shortest time possible. In terms of making money, he had already cast a long line, waiting for the big fish to bite the bait. As long as Tang Xia agreed, he believed that with his 2 formulas of skincare lotion and scar removal cream, he could absolutely help him make a lot of money. Subsequently, he sorted out the things that needed to be done recently. Tang Xiu, you damn poor bastard. What the hell did you do to my parents? A thunderous roar resounded from the classroom's door. Immediately after, Su Xiangfei rushed toward Tan Xiu with a speed of a 100-meter sprint. Although he had seen how fierce Tan Xiu was, he couldn't care less about it at this time. He remembered that when he was at home, his father was furious and smashed the home appliances, and his mother was sitting on the sofa with tears on her face. He couldn't wait to peel off Tan Xiu's skin and pull out his tendons and cut him into 8 pieces. Yuan Chuling suddenly looked up. His eyes instantly stared. Just as Su Xiangfei was about to pounce in front of Tan Xiu, he stood up and kicked Su Xiangfei, sending him flying several meters away and heavily hitting the desk. Aya! A pig-slaughtering scream came out of Su Xiangfei's mouth. Tang Xiu frowned as he looked at Su Xiangfei, whose forehead was broken from kowtowing and struggling to stand up. Then, he said indifferently, Su Xiangfei, if you're sick, then quickly go to the mental hospital to have a look. Don't provoke me if you're not sick. I can't afford to provoke your arrogant and despotic parents, nor do I care about them. So, take them to the hospital and you'll know what's wrong with them. Su Xiangfei's eyes seemed to be able to spurt out fire. He glared at Tan Xiu and roared, "It must be you. You bastard. You must have done something. Otherwise, my dad wouldn't have smashed things and scolded you at the same time. Tell me, what did you do to my parents? Else, I'll fight you to the death." Fight you to the death? Tan Xiu sneered. Relying on you? You framed and framed me. If it weren't for me being soft-hearted, I'm afraid you would have been in prison by now. Cheng Yannan suddenly stood up from her seat. She looked at Su Xiangfei's ferocious face and said with a light bell-like voice, "Su Xiangfei, it seems that my sister was the one who solved this case. I've heard from my sister that it was indeed you and your sister who framed Tan Xiu. Also, we're in the classroom. I hope you don't make a scene here. Otherwise, the school will definitely cancel your college entrance test qualification once the matter gets out of hand." Su Xiangfei's face instantly flushed red. He didn't expect that Qing Yannan would unexpectedly jump out to speak for Tan Xiao at this time. Moreover, that embarrassing matter had unexpectedly been made known to the whole class through Qing Yannan's mouth. What did it mean to be ashamed? At this moment, Su Xiangfei was having such a feeling. At this moment, he hated Tan Xiao, Qing Yannan, as well as that Yuan Chuling who had just kicked him. If looks could kill, perhaps he would have already killed those 3 people 1,000 times. For a moment, all the students in the classroom suddenly burst into an uproar. Oh my God! Is that true or false? Su Xiangfei actually framed Tan Xiao? I used to think that Tan Xiao was the black sheep of the herd. Never did I expect that Su Xiangfei is the one with a belly full of evil tricks. One may know a person's face but not his heart. I really didn't expect that Su Xiangfei could actually do such a shameless thing. From what they said, it seems that Tan Xiao and Su Xiangfei's families know each other. Could it be that there is some enmity between the 2 families? I didn't expect that I would actually misjudge him. I used to think that Su Xiangfei was a good person. But now I truly understand his character. Even if I want to associate with him in the future, I must guard against him. Su Xiangfei is really a scheming bitch. At this time, a beautiful figure appeared at the classroom's entrance. She had a gorgeous face and a perfect figure. Coupled with her fashionable dress, her beauty was so captivating. Su Xiangfei, however, didn't notice that he was already in a state of shame and indignation at the moment. His burning eyes moved away from Qing Yannan as he glared at Tan Xiao and roared, "Surname Tang, you always fucking hide behind a woman. What kind of hero are you? Fight me if you have the ability." A man who hides behind a woman is indeed not a hero. But a man who can arouse this Kang Xia's interest doesn't belong to this category. Kang Xia walked into the classroom and instantly attracted everyone's eyes. She came before Su Xiangfei with a haughty and full queen-like demeanor and spoke again, "I'll correct your mistake. Being a hero doesn't mean fighting and brawling. I think those who use their fists to solve problems are either forced or stupid. Which category do you think you belong to?" The anger on Su Xiangfei's face froze as he foolishly looked at Kang Xia, whose beauty was not inferior to his class teacher, Han Qingwu. His mouth opened, but he didn't know what to say. Kang Xia glanced at Su Xiangfei before she turned to look at Tan Xiao. She extended her hand and chuckled, "It's our first time meeting. I'm pleasantly surprised to see your age." Tan Xiao shook her hand and calmly said, "I didn't expect that the legendary gold manager, Miss Kang Xia, would be so beautiful. This is not the place to talk. Let's go somewhere else and talk." "Okay." Kang Xia shrugged her shoulders and said. Tan Xiao didn't look at Su Xiangfei again. His blatant disregard made Su Xiangfei feel uncomfortable. After leaving the classroom, Tan Xiao saw the class teacher, Han Qingwu, holding a thick stack of documents. "Tan Xiao, are you going to skip class again?" Upon seeing Tang Xiao coming out of the classroom, Han Qingwu suddenly felt as though once bitten by a snake, twice shy, as she immediately shouted. Tan Xiao looked a bit embarrassed, especially since Kang Xia was following behind him. Kang Xia, on the other hand, looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. She then looked at Han Qingwu and suddenly pursed her lips into a smile. This was the first time she saw Tan Xiao, but she felt that this young man who was 5 or 6 years younger than her was very interesting. After walking a few steps forward, Kang Xia extended her hand to Han Qingwu and said with a smile, "Are you Tan Xiao's class teacher?" "I'm Kang Xia, Tan Xiao's friend. I have something to discuss with him. I don't know if it's convenient for me to give him a vacation. I'll only need 2 hours at most." Han Qingwu looked at Kang Xia and then looked at Tan Xiao. She really couldn't figure out what was going on recently. Why so many people were looking for Tan Xiao? Just a moment ago, the principal called her to the office and forcefully asked her to give Tan Xiao a week off. What was most difficult for her to accept was that she had to come forward and deceive Tan Xiao's mother. She had to tell Tan Xiao's mother that Tan Xiao would go to another city to participate in the subject competition. "Hello. Since you have something to do, then go." Kang Xia slightly nodded and took the lead to walk away. Tan Xiao said with a smile, "Miss Han, then I'll go. You can't consider me skipping class this time." "Get lost." Han Qingwu suppressed the peculiar feeling in her heart and scolded with a smile. Tan Xiao chuckled. Just as he brushed past Han Qingwu, his footsteps slightly paused for a second and he quickly whispered, "Miss Han, you're actually more beautiful than Kong Xia. That's what I think." After saying that, he chased after Kong Xia as though he was flying. This stinky brat, he actually dares to flirt with me? Han Qingwu was at a loss whether she had to laugh or cry. She snappily rolled her eyes at Tan Xiao's back as she turned around and walked toward the classroom. Chapter 74. At the Starbucks cafe. Tan Xiao and Kong Xia were sitting face to face. Neither of them spoke first and were observing each other. Tan Xiao didn't like to drink coffee, so he was holding a cup of water. Looking at Kong Xia casually stirring the coffee with a spoon, Tan Xiao directly turned his head to look outside the window. Kong Xia's hand that was stirring the coffee suddenly stopped. Her brows slightly furrowed, and then quickly stretched out. She found that she couldn't see through Tan Xiao. It was a very strange feeling, so strange that even she herself felt it was inconceivable. One must know that she had entered the society very early. She had been working hard in the business circle for 7 or 8 years and had seen countless people, but there were only a few people she couldn't see through. And those few people were the elites among the elites in the business circle, the rich and powerful. Tan Xiao. Kong Xia finally couldn't help but call out. Tan Xiao turned his head and calmly said, "I thought Miss Kong came to Star City from thousands of miles away just to see me." Kong Xia couldn't help but laugh. She shook her head and said, "You're a very interesting young man. You're much more interesting than I expected. To be honest, I'm interested in you." Tan Xiao said with a smile, "You're still young, so don't look at me with that kind of eyes. Also, I advise you not to be interested in me, else you'll regret it." Kong Xia stared blankly for a moment and then asked with interest, "Why would I regret it?" Tan Xiao said, "There's a rumor that once a woman is interested in a man, she won't be far from falling into a man's tender embrace. I don't want you to fall in love with me. I just want you to work for me and make money for me." Ha! Kong Xia couldn't help but laugh and tears almost came out. "Interesting. It's really interesting. Tan Xiao, regardless of whether we can reach a cooperation agreement or not, I'll make you my friend." Friend? The smile on Tan Xiao's face disappeared without a trace and was replaced by a gloomy expression. In the 10,000 years in the immortal realm, if it wasn't because he trusted his friends too much, how could he have ended up in such a miserable state? His tone was much more indifferent as he said, "I don't need friends, I only need subordinates. If that's what you're planning to do, I advise you to take it back." Kong Xia's smile froze. She looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. After a long while, she slowly said, "All right, I'll take your advice. Now let's talk. What ability do you intend to use to make me your subordinate?" Tan Xiao said straightforwardly, 3 aspects. Number 1, I won't restrict you. Number 2, I have the skills. Number 3, you can make money by following me and realize your ambitions. Weak spot. This was Kong Xia's weakness, and Kong Xia had no reason to refuse in every aspect. However, she was not a person who would easily compromise. Staring at Tan Xiao with a deep gaze, Kong Xia asked, "As far as I know, Mr. Tang hasn't registered a company. Besides, I haven't verified the effect of the product yet." Tan Xiao took out 2 small porcelain bottles from his pocket and placed them on the table in front of Kong Xia. He then calmly said, "One is a bottle of skincare lotion, and the other is a bottle of scar removal cream. You can take it back to test the effect. The result will be out in a week. As for the registration of the company, I really haven't done it yet. If you need it, it should be done in a few days." Kong Xia directly put away the 2 porcelain bottles and asked, "How much is the registered capital?" "I don't have any money now." Tan Xiao shook his head. "Are you kidding me?" Kong Xia looked at Tan Xiao with an expression of disbelief. "You have no money, yet you want to register a company? You even boasted that you can help me realize my lofty ambitions?" "I can't say that I don't have any money," said Tan Xiao. "I've already sold 5% of the shares for 20 million yuan. However, I hope that you'll be the one to help me register the company and be the one responsible for managing it later." 5% of the shares? Sold for 20 million yuan? Kang Xia was dumbfounded. She suddenly felt that she had heard a big joke. He didn't even register the company, yet he could sell the shares? And he even sold it for such a sky-high price? Mr. Tang, if you're so insincere, then I don't think we need to talk anymore. What I need is a real boss, not someone who talks big and only knows how to brag. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment. He then took out his mobile and dialed Long Zhengyu's number. Brother Tang, are you looking for me? Long Zhengyu's voice came out of the phone. I need your 20 million investment funds now. If you can send the money to the Starbucks near Xingqing No. 1 High School within half an hour, I'll agree to invest in the company. Otherwise, I'll look for another shareholder. All right. Long Zhengyu directly hung up the phone. Kang Xia looked at Tan Xiao with an astonished expression. Sending 20 million yuan in half an hour? Is this a joke? Tan Xiao was well aware of Long Zhengyu's strength. Let alone sending 20 million yuan in half an hour, even if he was given 10 minutes, he could still send the money. However, the person who came was probably one of his men who was very close to him. Time fleeted by. In the blink of an eye, 20 minutes had passed. Kang Xia looked at the unhurried and silent Tan Xiao, yet a sense of expectation arose in her heart. If someone could really send 20 million yuan in half an hour, it would prove that Tan Xiao was not boasting. It could even prove that he was very capable. At this moment, a well-dressed middle-aged man ran all the way into the coffee shop. After looking around, he shouted, "Which one of you is Mr. Tan Xiao?" Tan Xiao waved his hand. He got up and looked at the middle-aged man who ran over. "I'm Tan Xiao. Are you sent by Long Zhengyu?" The middle-aged man respectfully said, "Yes. Chief Long is on the way to Yang City. He won't be able to catch up in half an hour. So he sent me to send the money to you. Mr. Tang, please take this bank card. There's 20 million yuan inside. The password is on the back of the card." Tan Xiao took the bank card. After sending the middle-aged man away, he directly put it in front of Kang Xia and lightly said, "You can check the money in this bank card yourself." Kang Xia quickly took out her mobile. After quickly checking it, the expression on her face became very interesting. There was disbelief and a bit of surprise on her face. After a long while, she slowly handed the bank card to Tan Xiao and solemnly said, "Mr. Tang, you've proven your ability. I've tested these two cosmetics, and they have a very good effect without any side effects. I think I'll agree to join you." Tan Xiao didn't take the bank card, but calmly said, "I'm very confident in my products. I'll send the formula to your mailbox via a short message. Take this 20 million yuan as the startup capital. If the effect is good, I hope you can fulfill your promise." "You trust me that much?" Kang Xia was surprised. Tan Xiao said, "If you doubt someone, don't use him, and if you use him, don't doubt him. This 20 million may be an astronomical figure in the eyes of many people, but it's just a small amount of money in my eyes. I think it's a good deal to exchange this small amount of money for the first test of you." Kang Xia raised her thumbs up and praised, "Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. I really hope that these two cosmetics have the effect you said. In that case, I can work under you. Last question, aside from the initial investment, how much additional funds will you add later?" Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and slowly said, "I don't know." "I don't know?" Kang Xia looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. She suddenly felt that Tan Xiao was like a wolf with nothing to gain. After hesitating for a moment, she smiled and said, "Since Mr. Tang can't answer my question, then I'll change my question. I mean, if I finally join you, what kind of treatment can I get?" 10% of the shares, replied Tan Xiao without hesitation. "Only 10%? Kang Xia was surprised. "Only 10%, said Tan Xiao calmly. Kang Xia shrugged her shoulders and said with a smile, 10%, then. I just hope that you won't kick me out when the scale of the company increases in the future. I don't have time to manage the company. I need capable people to work for me," said Tan Xiao. "I understand," Kang Xia said with a smile. "Since everything has been said, then I'll take my leave first." Tan Xiao nodded. "You're not going back to campus?" Kang Xia asked doubtfully. Tan Xiao smiled and said, "I've already learned what I need to learn in campus. Staying here is a bit boring. The environment here is good, so I want to relax. Kang Xia couldn't help laughing and said, "It seems that the time I asked for leave for you is not enough." That's right. Haha. With Kang Xia's departure, Tan Xiao knew that he had won her over. Next, he could hand over the registration, establishment, and construction of the company to Kang Xia. Coupled with Long Zhengyu's help, the early stage should be very smooth. However, he was a bit depressed when Kang Xia asked him about the additional funds. If Gong Dalong can really help me apply for leave and can hide it from my mother, then I can consider going with him. On one hand, I can help Jia Ruidao, and on the other hand, I can get some money back. Tan Xiao secretly thought. Ring, ring, ring. The ringtone of his mobile interrupted Tan Xiao's thoughts. When Tan Xiao grabbed his mobile and saw the caller ID, he suddenly felt a headache. The caller was Han Qingwu. There was still half an hour before the time to apply for leave. Is she afraid that I'll run away again? After thinking about it, he still chose to answer. Hello, is this Tan Xiao? Your mother has come to campus. You'd better hurry up. Han Qingwu's voice came from the phone. Tan Xiao's complexion changed as he hurriedly asked, Miss Han, why did my mother go to campus? Han Qingwu said, I don't know the specifics. It seems to be because of your uncle. In short, you'll know when you come back. Also, Su Xiangfei is your cousin, right? He seems to have a deep hostility toward your mother. Damn it. Tan Xiao cursed in his heart. Su Xiangfei hated him, so of course, he had a deep hostility toward his mother. He was worried that Su Xiangfei would do something to hurt his mother before he went back. Chapter 75. Tan Xiao's speed was very fast. When he rushed back to campus, he found his mother sitting in the office, accompanied by his class teacher, Han Qingwu, who was chatting with her. Seeing this situation, Tan Xiao's hanging heart slowly relaxed. He was thinking whether he should find someone to protect his mother in secret. What if he provoked a powerful enemy one day and they couldn't retaliate against him and turned around to retaliate against his mother? Mom, why did you come to campus? Tan Xiao looked at his mother and curiously asked. Upon seeing her son's arrival, Su Lingyun immediately stepped forward to pull his hand and hurriedly asked, Xiao, Mom has something urgent to talk to you about. What did you do to your uncle's family? The husband and wife came to our restaurant today, crying and kneeling, asking for your forgiveness. What the hell is going on? Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and then said, Mom, I went out to buy things a few days ago and met Su Shangwen and Zhang Min. They humiliated me the moment they met and even used their connections to get the school to expel me. A friend of mine was also with me at that time. My friend's family runs a business, which is 100 times more powerful than Shangwen Real Estate. Because my friend spoke up for me, he was insulted by Su Shangwen. What we didn't expect was that my friend's father happened to pass by and suddenly flew into a rage, wanting to teach Su Shangwen a lesson. If my guess is correct, he must have dealt with Su Shangwen, so he came to beg you, wanting me to speak up for him. Su Lingyun's complexion greatly changed. An angry expression appeared on her face as she angrily said, How can Su Shangwen do this? No matter what, you are still his nephew by blood. How can he treat you like this? Son, don't worry. If he dares to use his connections to get the school to expel you, I'll find him. Beside him, Han Qingwu also had an angry expression on her face. She recalled the attitude of some of the school's leaders towards Tan Xiao and understood some of Su Shangwen's actions. Immediately she said, Su, big sister, don't worry. As long as I'm in school, no one dares to bully Tan Xiao, and no one dares to kick him out of school. Su Lingyun said gratefully, Thank you, Teacher Su. I've heard about what happened. Thank you for taking Xiao in. Our Xiao is a very well-behaved child. It's all my fault for not being capable enough to make him suffer. Han Qingwu held Su Lingyun's hands and said kindly, Please don't say that. If Tan Xiao hadn't saved me a year ago, he wouldn't have had a car accident. This is what I should do. Su Lingyun already knew that her son had saved Han Qingwu, but she was still very grateful. After a long while, she turned her head and looked at Tan Xiao, saying, Son, what should we do now? Your uncle, the husband and wife are still staying in our restaurant and don't want to leave. Tan Xiao sighed inwardly. After all, Su Shangwen is my mother's blood brother. My mother is kind-hearted and can't stand Su Shangwen's insistent pleading. I'm afraid she doesn't want to see Su Shangwen fall into such a miserable end. What do you think, Mom? Su Lingyun hesitated and didn't know what to say for a while. After all, Su Shangwen's way of doing things was too ruthless. If he wasn't her son's classmate, her son would have been humiliated and might even lose his studies. But blood is thicker than water. For a time, she was caught in a dilemma. Tan Xiao helplessly said, "Mom, I'll let it go this time. I'll tell my classmate to make his father stop. However, if Su Shangwen dares to humiliate us again in the future, I won't let him go so easily." Although Tan Xiao said so, he was sneering inwardly. He only told Yuan Jingxian to stop, but he didn't tell Long Wenhan and Chen Zhizhong to stop. It was meaningless to talk about familial affection with people like Su Shangwen and his wife. Su Lingyun hesitated and said, "Xiao, do your words count?" Tan Xiao nodded affirmatively and said, "This matter happened because of me, so my words will definitely count. Don't worry. You'll understand when you go back to the restaurant." In the end, Tan Xiao pacified Su Lingyun and persuaded her to go back. At the door of the office, Han Qingwu looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression and meaningfully said, "Tan Xiao, you didn't tell the truth to your mother, did you? If your classmate's father really wanted to punish Su Shangwen because his son was humiliated, I'm afraid you won't be able to intervene. Be honest and tell me what happened." Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "Miss Han, it's not good for a woman to be too smart." Han Qingwu proudly smiled and said, "Who said it's not good for a woman to be too smart? It's not the era where a woman without talent is a virtue. No, you brat, don't change the topic and tell me what happened." "Well, since you're so curious, I'll tell you." Tan Xiao helplessly said, "Do you remember I told you that I met the Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals' big boss, Chen Zhizhong? I really cured his illness, so he owes me a big favor. At that time, when Su Shangwen humiliated me, he happened to bump into him. So he was very angry and wanted to make Su Shangwen pay the price." "Is it really like that?" Han Qingwu was surprised. "Is it really Chen Zhizhong?" Tan Xiao rolled his eyes and said, "I'm going to take a leave tonight to see Chen Zhizhong. Do you want to come with me?" "You want to take a leave again?" Han Qingwu angrily said. Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "Miss Han, I don't have a class at night, so I'm just going to talk to him. You can't make things difficult for my mother, can you?" Han Qingwu felt relieved and the anger on her face quickly vanished. She said, "If that's the case, then I'll give you a night's leave. Remember, don't be late for class tomorrow morning." Tan Xiao nodded with a smile. He originally had an appointment with Chen Zhizhong tonight and was thinking about how to leave. He didn't expect that his mother would come to the campus and help him a lot. "That's right, the principal looked for me today and asked me to give you a week's leave," said Han Qingwu. "Tell me honestly what's going on? Did he really agree?" Tan Xiao was surprised. "More than agree?" Han Qingwu angrily said. "He even told me to make up a lie to deceive your mother, saying that you're going to participate in a subject competition in another city. Judging from your words, you already know the reason. Tell me quickly what happened." Tan Xiao's mind was racing as he grinned and said, "Someone's teacher is sick, and it's very serious. I have some medical skills, don't I? So that person asked me to go to another city to treat his teacher. You also know that I don't have time to go to another city. In order to deceive him, I told him that I don't have time, and I can't explain it to the school and my mother. Who would have thought that he would go to the principal and ask you to make up a reason to hide it from my mother? You're not lying to me, are you?" Tan Xiao raised his palm and said seriously, "I swear in the name of my future wife that I'm not lying to you." Han Qingwu rolled her eyes at Tan Xiao and scolded him with a smile. "How old are you, brat? You're already thinking about your future wife. All right, leave your mother to me. Remember, you only have a week, starting from today." Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "It seems that my leave tonight is in vain." "You deserve it." Han Qingwu smiled happily. As Tan Xiao returned to the classroom, he saw Su Xiangfei glaring at him with an angry face. Tan Xiao just glanced at him and directly ignored him. He returned to his seat and looked at Yuan Chuling, who was diligently studying. He suddenly curiously asked, "Hey, how come you've changed today? I've never seen you so diligent before." Yuan Chuling grinned and said, "Hee, that's because I was muddle-headed before. You know, Tenshio. Actually, my parents' divorce is fake. Although they've applied for a divorce certificate, their relationship is better than before." "What's going on?" Tan Shio was confused. "I don't know about the specifics." Yuan Chuling shook his head. "My mother told me that they have their own difficulties in applying for a divorce, so she won't tell me about it for now. Wait until I graduate from college and have the ability to survive in society, then she'll tell me the whole story. I gave up on myself before because I didn't understand them. I won't do it again." Tan Shio suddenly understood. He patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Do you want me to help you?" "How will you help me?" Yuan Chuling was confused. "There's only 1 month left before the college entrance test. I'm now racing against time to study so that I can get a higher score in the college entrance test to make my parents happy." Tan Shio said with a smile, "Wait for me for a week. I'll teach you my learning experience a week later. As long as you follow my teaching, your grades will definitely improve by leaps and bounds." "Really?" Yuan Chuling was ecstatic. Tan Shio confidently said with a smile, "Haven't you seen my previous results? If I want to, I can easily get the first place in the school." At this moment, Qing Yannan, who had been eavesdropping on Tan Shio and Yuan Chuling in the front row, suddenly turned her head and said, "Tan Shio, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. We're all classmates. Since you can impart your learning experience and skills to Yuan Chuling, it shouldn't be a problem for you to teach me too, right?" Tan Shio couldn't help laughing and said, "All right. Since you helped me today, I promise you." Qing Yannan nodded with satisfaction. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and said, "Can I take 2 more female classmates? Think about it. Our class has a few students with excellent results in the college entrance test. It will be very beneficial for our teacher in charge, Miss Han." Tan Shio hesitated for a moment before nodding and said, "All right. But the number can't be too many." Tan Shio didn't have a good impression of his classmates in the class. In his opinion, these students had become stupid from studying. Whatever others said, they would believe it and join in the commotion. If it wasn't for Qing Yannan's words, and if it wasn't for Han Qingwu's benefit, he really didn't feel like teaching them. Yuan Chuling said, "Eldest brother, you said you want to wait for a week? Why don't you start now?" Tan Shio said with a smile, "I'll leave the school this afternoon after school. I've asked Miss Han for a week's leave." "You want to ask for a week's leave?" Yuan Chuling involuntarily exclaimed. In a flash, the whole class turned their heads and looked at Tan Shio and Yuan Chuling. In the eyes of those students, Tang Shio was an ignorant and incompetent student. They didn't know what kind of fucking luck he had last time, but he got the first place in the cohort. Unexpectedly, he was becoming less and less like a student, skipping classes and asking for leave. Chapter 76. A 6-month-old child's face could easily change. The sun was shining brightly in the afternoon, but as the evening approached, the sky began to drizzle. The entire Southgate town was shrouded in a hazy, misty rain. Vaguely, a few lights lit up one after another. In the villa, Tan Shio was sitting cross-legged on the balcony of his bedroom, silently sensing the situation inside his body. The 9 stars in his body had become more and more dazzling after several days of cultivation. Even though he was sitting cross-legged, the feeling of power was still like a surging wave that transmitted to his limbs and 5 bones. He was very clear that the practice of the skin-strengthening stage was imperative. After he returned from helping Jiarui Dao, he would go all out to find the herbs and spirit stones. If it was really difficult to find them in a short time, then he could only ask Chen Zhizhong for help. The path of cultivation is full of hardships and dangers. But I'm bound to ride the wind and break through the waves, and set foot on glory. In the past, he was rarely in a predicament of lacking cultivation resources. But the resources on Earth were scarce. If he wanted to cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, then he must plunder all the available resources, even if it was extremely difficult. He had the ambition of an eagle soaring in the sky, courageously going against the current. Facing all the difficulties, he firmly believed that they would not stump him. With his perception, he immediately sensed Chen Zhizhong's arrival. In the hall on the first floor, Chen Zhizhong was surprised as he looked at the villa's decoration. He found that even the place he lived in was not as good as this villa. Suddenly, he couldn't help but envy Long Hanwen. After all, his son had such foresight and accurate investment. He was definitely an elite of the commercial street, an outstanding talent. "You're here." Tan Xiu came down from the stairs and said with an expressionless face. Chen Zhizhong's heart tightened as he respectfully greeted and called out, "Master." This time, Tan Xiu didn't refute him. Instead, he came to the living room and sat on the sofa, calmly saying, "I have received several registered disciples, so I know that teaching disciples is troublesome. Therefore, I don't have much time to waste on teaching disciples. Before you worship me as your master, I have a request." "Please say it," Chen Zhizhong hurriedly said. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu had received several disciples at such a young age. If so, wouldn't he have several senior brothers in the future? "No hurry," said Tan Xiu. "I want to ask you a few questions first. If your answers satisfy me, then you will be my registered disciple from today onwards. If I'm not satisfied with your answer, go back to whence you came. Even what you see and hear here today must not be leaked." Chen Zhizhong's mind moved and he said, "Please ask." "I will definitely answer truthfully." Tan Xiu pointed upwards and said, "Do you believe that there is always someone better out there? Is there a higher existence above our earth?" Chen Zhizhong said, "Of course. The vast universe was boundless. Who knows how many civilizations there will be, how many brand new worlds?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I'm not talking about this universe. I'm talking about space. Just like the world in those Xianxia stories, there was the human world, the demon world, the immortal world, and the divine world. Do you believe that these higher-level spaces exist?" Chen Zhizhong pondered for a moment before slowly replying, "I don't know." Tan Xiu asked, "If there is, can you accept it?" Chen Zhizhong nodded without hesitation. There are all sorts of strange things in the boundless universe. More broadly, the devil realm, the immortal realm, and the god realm were not out of the question. If there really is one, I can naturally accept it. Tan Xiu asked, "Next question. How much do you know about cultivators?" "Cultivators? Could it be?" His mind turned quickly and he seriously said, "Cultivators are legendary figures in my eyes. What I know about them comes from fairy tales, and I've never encountered them in reality. However, I've heard of 2 places with such old immortals, but it's hard to say whether it's true or not." "Where are they?" asked Tan Xiu. "Qinghai and Exi," Chen Zhizhong replied. Tan Xiu nodded silently and said, "If what I teach you won't make you achieve much, will you still want to worship me as your master?" Chen Zhizhong said without hesitation, "As long as I can practice martial arts and make progress, I'm willing to worship you as my master." Tan Xiu pointed to the door and said, "I already know your answer. You can go now." Chen Zhizhong was stunned and instantly felt cold all over. He didn't understand what was wrong with his answer. Why did Tan Xiu refuse to accept him as a disciple? "Can you tell me what I can't satisfy you?" Tan Xiu said, "My disciple doesn't need to practice martial arts. My disciple only needs to have a heart that is not afraid of danger and has the courage to fight against fate. Learning my cultivation method will always go against the heaven's will. A little carelessness will lead to eternal damnation. To put it plainly, the most important thing to learn from me is to cultivate the heart, followed by the cultivation of the body." Chen Zhizhong immediately knelt in front of Tan Xiu and firmly said, "I have that heart. If I can make myself stronger, I'm willing to go against the heaven's will." Tan Xiu gazed deeply at him and watched his firm and resolute face. After a long silence, he nodded and said, "Go get some tea and then kowtow to me." "Yep, right, I'll go right away." Chen Zhizhong didn't react for a while. After he reacted, he immediately shouted with ecstasy, "Serve the tea. Kowtow." The simplest ceremony of worshipping a master and disciple only took 2 minutes to complete. Tang Xiu motioned for Chen Zhizhong to sit on the opposite sofa, and then slowly said, Anyhow, according to your age, your achievements in this life won't be too great even if you follow me to cultivate. It's very difficult for you to ascend to the heavens, and the chances of you becoming a supreme immortal are slim. However, since you've become my disciple, I'll naturally make you live longer and become stronger. Ascend to the heavens? The paragon of immortals. Chen Zhizhong's pupils violently contracted and his face was aghast. That's right, Tan Xiao said in a deep voice. I'm a cultivator, not someone who practices martial arts as you said. There are thousands of paths to the great Tao, but all of them lead to the same destination. I'll teach you immortal cultivation arts and guide you to step into the path of cultivation. As for how much you can achieve in the future, it's all up to your fortune. Fortune. It was indeed a great fortune. Chen Zhizhong was so excited that he wanted to shout out loud, but he didn't dare to act rashly in front of Tan Xiao. He had heard of cultivators, but he had never seen one. Such legendary figures were like towering mountains in his eyes, making him admire and yearn for them. Thank you, Master. This disciple will follow your teachings and cultivate seriously. Chen Zhizhong knelt in front of Tan Xiao again and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. Tan Xiao frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "You don't need to kowtow to me so easily in the future. I can't teach you much, so you can ask me when you encounter something you don't understand in your cultivation." Shortly after, Tan Xiao randomly picked a cultivation art and imparted it to Chen Zhizhong. The cultivation art he imparted might be mediocre in the eyes of those supreme immortals in the immortal world. But in the eyes of those ordinary immortals, it was no different from a legendary supreme divine art. Tan Xiao's present cultivation was too low to instill his spiritual sense, so he could only impart it bit by bit. It took him 4 hours to impart a cultivation art. All right, I've imparted you the cultivation art. I'll teach you some other knowledge when you really embark on the path of cultivation, such as alchemy, refining, arrays, and so on. But remember, you can't be too hasty in your cultivation. Otherwise, it will lead to instability in your state of mind and lead to cultivation deviation. I'll follow your teachings, Master. Chen Zhizhong respectfully replied. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, "All right, you can go now. Remember, you must never tell anyone about the cultivation art I'm imparting to you today, including your closest relatives." Understood. Chen Zhizhong immediately nodded. After Tan Xiao sent Chen Zhizhong away, he picked up his mobile phone and looked at the time, only to find that there was an unread message on his mobile phone. After opening it, he remembered that Gong Dalong took his ID number during the day and said that he wanted to book a plane ticket. He didn't expect that he had already booked the plane ticket, and the departure time was tomorrow morning. I don't know how it feels to fly by plane. Is it like flying on a flying sword? After pondering for a moment, Tang Xiao felt a bit hungry and went to the kitchen. What made him smile wryly was that the clean and tidy kitchen was empty. Even the fridge was empty. This house doesn't have the taste of home at all. It's better to live with Mother. Although the house is small, it has all the essentials and has the warmth of a home. After sighing with emotion, he was surprised to find that there was a menu on the wall behind the dining table. There were all kinds of dishes on it, and it was particularly sumptuous. After looking at it, he realized that the property management office left it for him. They were afraid that he didn't want to go out to eat and no one would cook for him, so they left a takeout menu. Sure enough, you get what you pay for. For this villa complex, the property management office is really considerate. Tan Xiao let out a faint smile and called the number on the menu to order a takeout. 20 minutes later, the doorbell of the villa's courtyard rang. When Tan Xiao came outside, he found that the takeout had been delivered, and the person who delivered it was none other than Long Zhenglin. "Why are you here?" asked Tan Xiao in surprise. "Big Bro Tang, I came especially to see you," said Long Zhenglin with an excited face. "I just met the delivery man outside the door, so I gave him the money and sent him away." "How come I feel that you're like a ghost that keeps haunting me?" Tan Xiao said with a helpless expression. "You're not enough to follow me during the day, yet you still come to sleep with me at night?" Long Zhenglin shook his head vigorously. The excitement on his face didn't diminish. "Big Bro Tang, I'm looking for you for something else. Do you still remember the prescription you gave me this afternoon? I bought all the medicinal herbs according to the prescription and then went home to ask the housekeeper to boil it for me. I felt different after taking it. It just so happened that there was a girl who was interested in me, so I tried it. Guess what happened? It was simply a miracle. I persisted for a full 20 minutes. I didn't lie to you. I specifically looked at the time, and 20 minutes was definitely enough. Are you sick? Why are you telling me this kind of thing? Tan Xiao was at a loss whether he had to laugh or cry as he cursed. Long Zhenglin shook his head again and said, "Big bro, I saw a strong business opportunity in that prescription. So, I pulled up my pants and hurriedly came to discuss with you about making a fortune." Business opportunity. Chapter 77. Tan Xiao looked at the excited Long Zhenglin in front of him with a puzzled expression. He really didn't understand how a prescription for invigorating the kidney and strengthening yang energy could contain such a huge business opportunity. "Tell me about it." Tan Xiao sobered up from his daze after a long while and said with great interest. Long Zhenglin pulled Tan Xiao to the living room on the first floor of the villa. After putting the takeout food on the table, he skillfully took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up. After taking a deep puff, he began to spit out a lot of saliva. "Eldest brother, you're sitting on a treasure mountain, but you don't know it. The effect of the prescription you gave me is unexpectedly good. Just think about it. How many men in the world are troubled by the matter of? How many of them are unable to harmonize with their husband's life, causing their families to be unable to live in harmony? How many women are unable to satisfy their men and end up having an affair? There's an organization that has investigated this issue. According to the statistics of the survey, 75% of men in the world are unable to satisfy their partners. 37% of them can't last for more than 10 minutes. 8% of them are quick shooters and can't last for more than 5 minutes. This survey may not be very rigorous, but the organization has spent 4 years to investigate more than 100,000 adults all over the world and finally came to this conclusion. Long Zhenglin wiped his mouth and excitedly said again, "There's no man in the world who doesn't want to show off his masculinity in bed and kill his partner. None, absolutely none. Even homosexuals want to have the image of an Iron Man deeply implanted in their partner's heart." "What do you mean?" Tan Xiao seemed to realize something as he probingly asked. Long Zhenglin said aloud, "Nowadays, the aphrodisiac drugs sold on the market indeed have the effect of restoring a man's masculinity. But those drugs have great side effects on the body. Many people are unwilling to buy those drugs even if they have to bear the title of incompetent. But the medicine you gave me is different. On one hand, it can nourish the kidney and treat kidney deficiency. On the other hand, it can restore a man's masculinity. This is absolutely a divine tool for making money." Tan Xiao quickly said, "This medicine not only has the effect of invigorating the kidney and strengthening yang energy, but it also has great nourishing benefits for women. It even has a little cosmetic effect." "Heavens!" Long Zhenglin directly jumped up from the sofa. His eyes were bigger than a copper bell. After a while, an angry expression suddenly appeared on his face. He looked at Tan Xiao and roared, "Boss, you're wasting God's gift recklessly. Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Why didn't you give me this prescription earlier?" Tan Xiao rolled his eyes at him and said angrily, "How long have I known you?" Long Zhenglin's breathing stagnated, and the anger on his face immediately vanished. With some awkwardness, he smiled and said, Yes. It's all my fault for knowing you too late. If I had known you earlier, I'm afraid I would have fallen for you long ago." Tan Xiao laughed and scolded, "Don't talk nonsense. You came all the way here to find me. I believe you must have the idea of using this prescription to make money. Tell me, I'll see if I can help you." Long Zhenglin immediately said, "Eldest brother, do you have any way to make the medicinal soup taste better? For example, those drinks, sweet and creamy." Tan Xiao's eyes lit up, and his heart suddenly palpitated. Although he was not very familiar with the domestic beverage market, he could fully imagine how huge it was. He had heard that several beverages or dairy products occupied half of the market share, and its big bosses had successfully squeezed into the ranks of the country's super rich and powerful. If this kind of product that could be compared to medicine and could also be used as a beverage was pushed to the market, once it exploded in the whole country, what kind of sales share would it have? How amazing would the profits be? If it could be promoted to the whole world, then Tan Xiu stared deeply at Long Zhenglin as all kinds of thoughts constantly churned inside his mind. After being silent for a long time, he slowly said, "Your suggestion is very good, very good. As long as the promotion channel is perfect, I'm afraid it will cause a huge sensation once the product hits the market, and the profits will also be very terrifying. Long Zhenglin, how do you plan to cooperate with me?" Long Zhenglin probed, "I want some shares, and the management rights will be handled by your people, eldest brother." Tan Xiu didn't answer him, but asked, "I want to know, how much ability have you learned in the Long Group all these years? If you were asked to control a huge business group, would you be able to do it?" Long Zhenglin's expression froze. With a bit of embarrassment, he shook his head and said, "I can't. Even if it's an ordinary company, it'll be very difficult for me to manage it. If it were my big brother, he could control a small company. But a super large company would be very difficult even for my big brother. Such being the case, I'll hand over the management of the company to someone else," said Tan Xiu. "But I can let you invest in it, and if you want, you can also participate in the management of the company. May I know how much you're going to invest in the early stage? I can ask my dad for money." Long Zhenglin quickly said, "As for the shares, I'll be satisfied if you give me 5%. As for management, I'm not good at it. At most, I can help with the odd jobs." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Don't look for your dad. How much can you get if you invest your own money?" Long Zhenglin said with an awkward expression, "I'm quite poor, so it's not a problem for me to take out a few million. But if it's more, I'm afraid I'll have to sell my private property and luxury cars. If I sell them all, I should be able to get 20 to 30 million. You invest 3 million, and I'll give you 10% of the shares," said Tan Xiu. "But you must not easily spread the fact that I'm the boss of the company." Long Zhenglin curiously asked, "Can I say it if my dad and brother ask?" "Up to you," Tan Xiu calmly said. Long Zhenglin rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "All right, I got it. It seems like I don't need to ask about the food and drinks if I follow Big Bro. Big Bro, I've decided to follow you in this life. Even if you want to dump me, I won't do it." "Fuck off," Tan Xiu cursed with a smile. Shortly after, Tan Xiu drove Long Zhenglin away. When the villa was quiet, he began to think about the new product's formula in his mind. He needed to ensure the new product's quality while also making it taste good. How could he check the formula of the other drinks? Tan Xiu was a bit tangled inside. After thinking about it, he decided to ask someone and immediately dialed Kong Xia's cell number. "What's up, Tan Xiu?" Kong Xia's sleepy voice came out of the phone. Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment. He looked at the time and suddenly woke up. Suddenly, an awkward expression appeared on his face. After all, it was almost 2 o'clock in the night. "Sorry, I forgot that it's time to sleep now. I'm looking for you because there's something I want to consult you about." "What is it?" Tan Xiu asked. "You're very experienced in running a business. What I want to ask is, if I want to know the formula of the other drinks, what do I need to do?" "Find Ms. Du," Kong Xia said snappily. "Who's Ms. Du? Does she know the formula of those drinks?" Tan Xiu's eyes were filled with deep confusion as he couldn't help but ask. Kong Xia quivered. She was at a loss whether she had to laugh or cry as her voice came out again. "Come on, are you still a good youth from the New World? You don't even know who Ms. Du is? But you can search on Baidu and you'll be clear about it. However, the formulas on the internet, as well as the formulas on the product bottles, were not very complete. After all, the formula of any product is a trade secret of the owner." Tan Xiu said, "It doesn't matter. I got it. Thank you." Kong Xia asked, "Do you want to do a beverage business?" Tan Xiu didn't conceal it as he said, "I do have such an idea. But I don't have the formula yet, so I want to study it." Kong Xia was speechless. She couldn't help but mutter inside, "Do you think it's that easy to study the formula? If it's that easy, there would have been countless drinks in the world." Suddenly, she recalled the 2 cosmetic formulas Tan Xiu gave her. She couldn't help but think, could it be that he also came up with those 2 cosmetic formulas randomly? In an instant, Kang Xia's heart sank. Tan Xiao didn't know that his phone call had turned Kang Xia's mood into a mess, to the point that she couldn't sleep all night. He hung up the phone and was ready to search for other beverage formulas on the internet. But he was dumbfounded as he remembered that he didn't have a computer. Even his mobile phone didn't have internet connection. Forget it. Haste makes waste. I'll buy a computer when I have time. It won't be too late to search when I have internet. Tan Xiao shook his head. He put away all his thoughts and prepared to sleep. After all, he had to follow Gong Daong to Jingmen Island tomorrow, so he must have enough energy. Jingmen Island was a large isolated island in the Southern Sea. After decades of development, it had now become a bustling international metropolis and an important transportation hub in Southeast Asia. The flourishing tourism industry had driven the economy of the entire Jingmen Island to advance by leaps and bounds. Jingmen Island Airport. Jia Yele was restlessly standing at the airport's exit. His eyes were constantly looking at the passengers coming out. At the same time, there was deep regret in his heart. But at the same time, he also hoped that his eldest senior brother could invite the gambling grandmaster that his father had praised. At this moment, he knew that his father was gambling with those bastards who cheated him. Perhaps, his father's lost capital would increase if he was a minute late. If that grandmaster can't do it, I'm afraid we'll never be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. His heart was full of bitterness. Yele! A shout came from the corner behind the stream of people. Jia Yele looked toward the source of the voice. A pleasantly surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. He quickly walked to greet him. Eldest senior brother, you're finally back. Where's that gambling grandmaster? Chapter 78. Tan Xiao, who was standing next to Gong Daong, could see that Jia Yele's eyes only glanced at him and then looked around to find the gambling grandmaster. A bit of coldness arose in his heart. In particular, his words made Tan Xiao a bit dissatisfied. This Jia Yele in front of him actually judged people by their appearance. Tan Xiao finally understood why he was tricked by others. He had countless ways to trick such a person. Gong Daong also saw through Jia Yele's thoughts. He slapped his head and snappily said, "He's Grandmaster Tang, the gambling grandmaster I specially invited." Jia Yele rubbed his head as his vision fell on Tan Xiao. With just a glance, he called out in disbelief, "Eldest senior brother, are you kidding me? He's so young and he doesn't even look older than me, no? How can he be more powerful than my dad? How could he be a gambling grandmaster? Idiot." Tan Xiao secretly cursed inside. He was completely speechless toward Jia Yele. Gong Daong was infuriated by Jia Yele. If it wasn't because he was in front of Tan Xiao, he really wanted to slap this idiot junior brother to death. The first time he saw Tan Xiao, he indeed had contempt in his heart. After all, the impression Tan Xiao gave him was too young. However, in the contest between Tan Xiao and Su Shangwen, although he had helped Tan Xiao, he didn't play much of a role. But Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong, the 2 rich and powerful people of Star City, had stood up to help Tan Xiao. It seemed that they intended to express their goodwill to Tan Xiao. This made him suddenly wake up and understand the truth that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. Gong Daong glanced at the indifferent expression on Tan Xiao's face. He then pulled Jia Yele out of the crowd and came to a remote place tens of meters away. Without hesitation, he fiercely slapped Jia Yele's face and angrily glared at him and said, "Remember me. Judging a book by its cover is a taboo for professional gamblers like us. Master Tang won Master at the gambling table. Do you think Master would lie to you? If Master Tang didn't have the ability, do you think Master would treat him as a life-saving straw? You're not doubting Master Tang, you're doubting your father." Jia Yele covered his burning cheeks and looked at Tan Xiao, who had followed him here. He immediately broke out in a cold sweat. How could he not know that he had committed the biggest taboo of professional gamblers? How could he not know that he had judged people by their appearance? With a bit of regret, he looked at Tan Xiao and bowed deeply, saying, "Grandmaster Tang, I was rude just now. Please be magnanimous and don't let me lower myself to the same level as this person who has no foresight. I'm sorry, I hope you can forgive me. Tan Xiu was originally very unhappy with Jia Yele, but seeing him admit his mistake so easily and even apologize straightforwardly with a tone and expression full of sincerity, Tan Xiu had a whole new level of respect for him. As the saying goes, there is nothing more virtuous than being able to correct one's mistakes. Although Jia Yele had some flaws in his character, he could be regarded as someone who could be taught. What about your father? Tan Xiu nodded slightly and calmly asked. Jia Yele carefully took the suitcase from Tan Xiu's hand and hurriedly said, My father is at the gambling table. Since today is the deadline set by the other party, he must continue to gamble with them. Otherwise, my mother's relic will be sold off by them. Tan Xiu secretly shook his head. It seemed that this Jia Ruidao had sunk deep into the pit. It was said that when beating a snake, one should hit the weak spot. Others had seized Jia Ruidao's weak spot, so he had no choice but to succumb. Rhythm. Tan Xiu was very clear about the meaning of this word, especially the word rhythm. He knew what it meant to gamblers. If a professional gambler could control the rhythm of the entire game, he would undoubtedly win big. On the contrary, once he lost the control of this rhythm, it would be extremely difficult for him to win. Jingmen Island, Paradise Club. All the regulars in Jingmen Island, as long as they were keen gamblers, there was no one who didn't know them. It was not in a building, but inside a luxury cruise ship at Jingmen Island's port. Rumor had it that the big boss behind the scenes of the Paradise Club was Ouyang Lulu, the eldest daughter of Jingmen Island's first family, the Ouyang family. Of course, this was an illegal business, so she had distributed a lot of shares. Otherwise, without a safe haven, it would be difficult for those jealous people to get rid of it. At this moment, in a spacious and bright office inside the Paradise Club's luxury cruise ship, Ouyang Lulu warmly entertained her two classmates from the capital. Da Hong Pao, produced in Wui Mountain, is a type of oolong tea with excellent quality. It's a special famous tea in the country. Its shape is tight, and it has a greenish-brown color. After brewing, it will have a bright orange color with red and green leaves. The most outstanding quality of this tea is its fragrant orchid fragrance. The fragrance lasts for a long time, and the rock charm is obvious. Its efficacy is innumerable. A smile hung on the corner of Bai Tao's mouth as he watched Ouyang Lulu elegantly carrying out the tea-making process. Then he continued, This top-grade Da Hong Pao is something that's hard to find even with 1,000 gold coins. My uncle once spent a lot of effort to buy a few batches from some big tea merchants in the southern province. It seems that classmate Ouyang is very capable. You can even get your hands on this top-grade tea. Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, I say, old classmate, is it interesting to tease me? But I didn't expect you to be so proficient in the tea ceremony. I'd like to consult you when I have time later. Bai Tao was startled. He quickly waved his hand and forced a smile. I was just showing off my slight skill in front of Lu Ban. Please don't consult me. If you really want to consult, you can consult others. I know someone's tea ceremony skill is very powerful. Even what I know is imperceptibly influenced by what I've seen and heard. Who is it? Asked Ouyang Lulu with a puzzled expression. Bai Tao glanced at Chu Yi and chuckled, far away on the horizon, but close at hand. Ouyang Lulu was exceptionally smart. She immediately turned to look at Chu Yi and said with an astonished expression, Chu Yi, it turns out that the tea ceremony expert is you. What's wrong? You're still playing low-key in front of your old classmate? Chu Yi couldn't help laughing. I used to think that my tea ceremony skill was an expert among my peers. But after seeing your tea-making skills, I'm sincerely convinced. There's always someone better than you out there. Classmate Ouyang, you've given me a good lesson today. Ouyang Lulu said with a charming smile, modesty makes people fat. I reckon that you'll become a big fatty in a short time. Ah, that's right, are you two very free recently? How did you come to Jingmen Island? Originally, we went to Star City to find that Long Zhenyu brat. We made an appointment to go to Thailand to play together. But I didn't expect that brat to change his mind at the last minute and give up the opportunity to go out for a big project. Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, although I've never seen Long Zhenyu, I've heard his name many times. Especially the two of you. Every time you meet, you always mention him in my ear. It seems that I must see this famous young Master Long if I have the opportunity later. I want to see what kind of outstanding person he is, to be worthy of such a deep friendship between the two of you. Bai Tao said with a smile, of course he's amazing. He's not much worse than us. Ouyang Lulu couldn't help laughing. Are you praising him? Or are you praising the two of you? Chu Yi's expression suddenly moved as he said, Lulu, Long Zhenyu is really outstanding. Among the younger generation, there are only a few talented youths who are more powerful than him. However, our trip to Star City this time turned out to be even more interesting. To be exact, it's a more interesting person. Who is it? Ouyang Lulu asked in surprise. Chu Yi said, I don't know the specifics, but I know that he's a young man. The most inconceivable thing is that he's actually a high school student. You can't imagine that it's that high school student who helped Long Zhenyu win a big project. Even the incomparably arrogant Long Zhenyu actually worships that high school student. Ouyang Lulu said with surprise, Long Zhenyu actually worships a high school student? Are you kidding me? Bai Tao said, we're absolutely not kidding. I can really feel that Long Zhenyu really worships him. When we were chatting and drinking tea with Long Zhenyu, that young man called Tang Xiu called Long Zhenyu and asked him to help him find a professional manager. Long Zhenyu's attitude was simply even more intimate than when he was treating his biological brother. Ouyang Lulu was confused. Why would a high school student want to find a professional manager? Bai Tao said, he said that he's preparing to set up a company, but he doesn't have the time to manage it, so he asked Long Zhenyu to help him find a professional manager. You don't know, but we happened to be there at that time, so Chu Yi gave him a rotten idea. He asked Tan Xiu to invite Kong Xia. Old classmate, have you heard of Kong Xia's name? I really want to see if that kid can invite Kong Xia. Ouyang Lulu rolled her eyes and scolded with a smile, you two are really not good things. Who is Kong Xia? She's a super elite from the world's financial center, Wall Street. Countless big shots in the business world want to take her as their subordinate. After countless efforts, all of them failed. And you want a high school student to invite her? Isn't this an international joke? Bai Tao chuckled and said, hee hee, it's just for fun. Chu Yi's expression suddenly moved. He grabbed his mobile and dialed a number. After the other party picked up, he asked, is there any news about the information I asked you to investigate? Yesterday, Kong Xia went to Star City alone. Her purpose is unknown. What? Chu Yi suddenly felt that there was something wrong with his ears. Kong Xia went to Star City? What did she go to Star City for? Suddenly, there was an indescribable complex emotion in Chu Yi's heart. It was like a surging wave, rolling endlessly inside his heart. Ouyang Lulu looked at Chu Yi's strange expression and asked curiously, what's going on? Chu Yi hung up the phone and looked at the four people's gazes, saying, I was curious, so I sent someone to investigate Kong Xia's whereabouts. I just got the answer that Kong Xia went to Star City yesterday. Her purpose is unknown. She went to Star City? Bai Tao directly jumped up from the sofa and exclaimed in disbelief. Kong Xia went to Star City because of that Tan Xiu? How is this possible? Chapter 79. Tan Xiu? This name was deeply engraved in Ouyang Lulu's heart. She was very clear about the importance of a person that Chu Yi and Bai Tao had in mind. Not to mention that this person was worshipped by Long Zhenyu, so he absolutely must not be underestimated. Furthermore, if the legendary gold manager Kong Xia really went to Star City alone for him, then he was really amazing. Of course, regardless of whether Kong Xia would work for him or not, as long as Kong Xia personally went there, his means were already heaven-defying. I seem to be more interested in this Tan Xiu than Long Zhenyu. Ouyang Lulu smiled as she handed the brewed tea to the two of them. Bai Tao suppressed the shock in his heart as he took the tea and said, I have the same feeling. That Chu Yi really aroused my interest. If he's really amazing, I don't mind having another friend. Chu Yi shook his head and said, I'm afraid it's not easy to become Tan Xiu's friend. If I'm not mistaken, Long Zhengyu and Tan Xiu are not real friends when we were in Star City. Even if Long Zhengyu gave him a villa and spared no effort to help him. There are some people in this world who can easily become friends without any conflicts of interest. But once they are mixed with interests, wanting to become real friends is as difficult as ascending to the blue sky. Ouyang Lulu let out a shallow smile and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this. You two came to Jingmen Island. Don't tell me that you want to talk about old times with this old classmate of yours. Tell me, what's so fun about it? I can join in." Bai Tao and Chu Yi glanced at each other. Then Chu Yi chuckled and said, "I got a call 2 days ago. One of my little brother's men recently became a banker in Jingmen Island and cheated a kid. As a result, the young one was beaten and the old one came forward. Because of this, my little brother won a jade pendant of extremely high quality from the old man. You also know that I'm very interested in jades and jadeite business, so I came here to have a look." Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, "I know about this. The one who got cheated is called Jia Ruidao. He used to be a famous professional gambler and could barely be considered a master. Unfortunately, this time he met a difficult opponent, one of the top 3 golden fingers in Macau, Yi Taifu. Not only did he lose all his money, but he also borrowed hundreds of millions of yuan from his old friends. I reckon that he's about to lose everything again." Chu Yi said with a smile, "I have no interest in gambling. But I'm interested in that jade pendant." Ouyang Lulu looked at the time and said, "They happen to be gambling today. Do you want to go and have a look?" "Oh, right, since you are here, you should know that the bet between Yi Taifu and Jia Ruidao is going to take place in our Paradise Club, right?" Bang bang. Someone knocked on the door and a middle-aged man walked into the room. "What is it?" Ouyang Lulu casually asked. The middle-aged man said, "Boss, the next bet is between Yi Taifu and Jia Ruidao." Jia Ruidao suddenly called a halt and left our Paradise Club. He said that the bet will be rescheduled to tomorrow. Ouyang Lulu's brows pricked as she looked at Chu Yi and said with a smile, "It seems that you won't be able to see it today. Let's go. I'll treat you to dinner tonight." Alright. Chu Yi and Bai Tao didn't care about the bet, so they weren't disappointed. Jingmen Island. Outside the Jarvis 5-star hotel's entrance, Jia Ruidao's face was full of excitement. His eyes were constantly looking at the street in the distance. Next to him, his second disciple, Zhang Taichun, also had a face full of expectation. Their savior would arrive soon. They were very clear that the upcoming arrival of their benefactor would be their last life-saving straw. Master Tang should be arriving soon, right?" Zhang Taichun raised his wrist and looked at his watch. Jia Ruidao said, "Yes. He should have arrived by now. Could it be that there was an accident on the road?" Zhang Taichun's eyes narrowed as he pointed to the street and asked, "Master, that should be the car, right?" Jia Ruidao looked at his second disciple's arm and suddenly said with a pleasantly surprised expression, "Yes, that's your junior brother's car. He should be coming back." The car stopped. Jia Ruidao sprinted to the car and opened the door. "Brother Tang." The moment Jia Ruidao saw Tan Xiu, he excitedly called out. However, his address made his 3 disciples look at each other in dismay as they blushed with shame. After all, even the youngest among them, Jia Yele, was 5 or 6 years older than Tan Xiu. This address directly lowered their seniority. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Weren't you gambling on the table? Why did you come back?" Jia Ruidao said with a bitter expression, "I lost almost all my money. I must leave some money for you to gamble with the other party tomorrow. So, I called for a halt midway and hurried back." Tan Xiu said, "Let's go. Let's go inside." In the presidential suite on the top floor of the Jarvis Hotel, Tan Xiu and Jia Ruidao sat on the sofa in the hall while Jia Ruidao's 3 disciples stood behind him. Every time Jia Yele's eyes swept over his father, a trace of fear could be seen on his face. "Brother Tang, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. You came from thousands of miles away to help me. I, Jia Ruidao, will always remember this gratitude in my heart. If you need me in the future, even if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, I, Jia Ruidao, will never frown." Jia Ruidao said with a sincere expression. Tan Xiu said, "Give me the opponent's information." Jia Ruidao immediately nodded to his second disciple, Zhang Taichun. A moment later, the information was handed over to Tan Xiu. While Tan Xiu was reading the information, Jia Ruidao said, "Our opponent is called Chen Kai, a famous playboy in Jingmen Island. This time, he invited Yi Taifu with a huge sum of money. Not only my disciples, but I also lost a lot of games. Yi Taifu is one of the top 3 gambling masters in Macau. He's also a famous cheat. I thought that even if I'm not stronger than him, I'm not much worse than him, but, alas." While listening to Jia Ruidao's narration, Tan Xiu looked at the information in his hands. 10 minutes later, he knew the whole thing like the back of his hand. He also had a general understanding of the opponent's situation. A very difficult master to deal with. Tan Xiu secretly sighed inside his heart. He looked at Jia Ruidao and said, "I can help you gamble with the opponent, but I have a condition." Jia Ruidao said, "Please say it." Tan Xiu said, "First of all, I want to make it clear that I don't know how to gamble. I think you're clear about this. After all, when we were gambling, I secretly learned your skills. If I really lose, you can't blame me." Jia Ruidao seriously said, "I absolutely won't." Tan Xiu said, "If I win, I don't care about your capital, but I want half of all the money I win." Jia Ruidao said without hesitation, "I only want my wife's belongings. All the other money is yours." Tan Xiu shook his head. "I said I only want half." Jia Ruidao hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Tan Xiu didn't seem to be lying, he nodded and said, "I agree." Tan Xiu looked at Jia Ruidao's 3 apprentices and immediately said, "My condition is finished. You also know that I don't know anything about gambling. Apart from dice, I don't know anything about other types of gambling. So today, you need to explain all types of gambling to me, and also teach me those skills." Alright. Jia Ruidao also had this intention, so he happily agreed. Immediately, Jia Ruidao ordered his 3 apprentices to find a variety of gambling tools. There were many types of gambling. Jia Ruidao focused on teaching Tan Xiu dice, 5-card stud, pai gao, mahjong, blackjack, golden flower. You can play dice, and it's very good. I won't teach you this one. Now, the first thing I'll teach you is blackjack. This gambling method is also the most common gambling method. I've been gambling with Yi Taifu for the past few days, and almost all of them are blackjack. Generally, blackjack is used from 1 to 8 cards. The dealer will give 2 cards to each player. One card is facing up, which is called the name card, and the other is facing down, which is called the dark card. In total, it will be dealt. Ordinary gamblers may only rely on luck to win or lose. But a real master gambler completely relies on a variety of skills. To put it bluntly, those skills are almost all a smokescreen used to deceive people. As the saying goes, 9 out of 10 gambles are deceiving people. Jia Ruidao explained while demonstrating to Tan Xiu. Along with the constant changes of his hands, the skillful shuffling of the cards with lightning speed made Tan Xiu secretly exclaim in admiration, 360 professions, each profession has its own master. If one's gambling skill can be practiced to the acme of perfection, one can absolutely make a fortune. Of course, the premise is that one must have the opportunity to win money and have the life to spend it. The second is 5-card stud, the third is pai gao, the fourth is, time passed bit by bit, and in the blink of an eye, it was already evening. Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu didn't eat, they even forgot the feeling of hunger. Between the 2 of them, one was enjoying teaching, and the other one was enjoying learning to his heart's content. Even at night, they didn't pay attention. The last one is golden flower. Jia Ruidao grabbed a new deck of playing cards. After drawing out the joker and joker, he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "This way of playing." Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt him and said, "I know how to play this game because I've seen others play it. You just need to tell me the technique of golden flower." Jia Ruidao knew that Tan Xiu was formidable. He had seen it before, and today, it was an eye-opener for him. He taught Tan Xiu the gambling skill, and Tan Xiu quickly learned it. Even his proficiency in it also improved at lightning speed. Therefore, he didn't have the slightest anger toward Tan Xiu for interrupting him. Instead, he was secretly happy. There are two main aspects to pay attention to when playing Golden Flower. First, deception. To quote from The Art of War, the art of deception. Playing is actually a psychological game. Some people get small cards, but they can rely on the deception to win big. Some people get big cards, but they are afraid that the other side will get bigger, so they give up. Second, secretly take pictures and change cards. A lot of powerful experts have hidden cards on their bodies. This kind of hidden card can't be found by others, but it depends on the other party's ability to hide it. The other one is hand speed. In gambling, hand speed plays a crucial role. For example, this Golden Flower. Chapter 80. Jia Ruidao skillfully shuffled the cards and then gave 3 dark cards to Tan Xiao and himself. Then he put the rest of the cards aside and continued. After the dealer has finished dealing the cards, he will put the cards on the table in front of him. I once heard of an expert who could use the cards in his hand to shoot out and hit the remaining cards in the deck. With a very fast speed, he would hit out the cards he needed, and his original cards would be left in the remaining cards. However, a gambler who can do this is definitely a god of gamblers. For example, there is such a god of gamblers in the Las Vegas casino. Suddenly, Ruidao patted his forehead and said in annoyance, "I forgot a crucial factor. That is, memorizing and calculating the cards. Your eyes must always stare at the dealer's hand and follow his rhythm. You must remember and calculate the position of each card. Especially when you cut the cards, you must be accurate." Tan Xiao followed Jia Ruidao's explanation and touched his 3 cards. When he saw the numbers on the cards, his brows suddenly wrinkled. His eyes swept over the remaining cards that Jia Ruidao had just put down. His hand moved as fast as lightning, and in an instant, he had already finished changing the cards. Even smaller? Tan Xiao secretly sighed inside. He realized that he didn't carefully look at the cards that Jia Ruidao shuffled. He also didn't remember each card's face and position. Seeing that Jia Ruidao didn't notice him changing the cards, he immediately clamped a card and changed it again. 4 of spades, 5 of hearts, 6 of hearts, straight? Tan Xiao flipped the cards and said, "It's your turn." Jia Ruidao said with a smile, "My luck is good." As he spoke, his hand quickly swept the remaining cards in front of him. But almost in an instant, Tan Xiao quickly and accurately grabbed his wrist. As for the card that Jia Ruidao was holding in his hand, he did not exchange it. "Don't play with your hand speed in front of me." Jia Ruidao's expression turned dumbfounded. He looked at Tan Xiao's hand in disbelief, and the corner of his mouth twitched a few times. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's really hard to believe. How can your eyes be so sharp? How can your hand be so fast?" My hand speed was fast, partly because of my talent, and partly because of my decades of practice. But you... Tan Xiao lightly said, "I practice martial arts, so I need to be observant and alert. My punches are as fast as lightning, and my palms are as fast as light. Unless it's someone who's faster than me, I'll easily find out if they cheat in front of me." Jia Ruidao was overjoyed and said, "That's great. I really didn't expect that Brother Tang is a martial artist. After today's lesson, my worried heart can finally be at ease. To be honest, it's a great loss for the gambling industry that you're not a professional gambler, Brother Tang. I feel that if you can focus on practicing your gambling skills, you can become a famous gambling master in at most 3 to 5 years. Gambling grandmaster? Tan Xiao secretly rolled his eyes inside. He had nothing better to do, so he became a gambling grandmaster. Not to mention that he didn't have the slightest interest in gambling. He needed to cultivate and enhance his strength to return to the peak of the immortal world. He couldn't wait to race against time, so he didn't have the time to waste. Grumble. Suddenly, a sound came from Jia Ruidao's stomach. Tan Xiao smiled indifferently and said, "It's very late now. Let's go out and eat something first. I've already memorized all the gambling techniques you taught me. I'll practice them again tonight." Jia Ruidao had exhausted his mind and spirit on the gambling table during the day, so he was in a tense state. After he came back, he taught Tan Xiao gambling techniques. Seeing Tan Xiao's extraordinary talent that could easily accept and learn almost every gambling method, Jia Ruidao was overjoyed. His mood changed from great sorrow to great joy, causing him to feel a burst of exhaustion at this moment. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, he naturally raised his hands in agreement. Brother Tang, my disciples should have booked a private box. Let's go now. After leaving the presidential suite, Jia Ruidao's eldest disciple, Gong Daong, was waiting outside the door. Upon seeing the two of them coming out, he immediately respectfully said, Master, Grandmaster Tang, I've booked a private box in the Everlasting Feast Hall. Second junior brother and little junior brother are already waiting there. Good. Jia Ruidao nodded in satisfaction. He looked at Tan Xiu and quickly said, Brother Tang, the Everlasting Feast Hall is Jingmen Island's specialty restaurant. It's a very high-class place. If you're not a member, you simply can't enter the door. Yeah. Tan Xiu nodded. He didn't have a favorable impression toward those restaurants and clubs in the country that easily required one's status and title. It was because the slogan of this new era was, everyone is equal and build a harmonious society together. However, to set up such a threshold was to divide people into 3, 6, or 9 ranks. If it was in the world of immortal cultivation, Tan Xiu might have been accustomed to it. But in this new era, it made him feel like he was building a monument to his chastity. Sitting in the Mercedes-Benz, passing through the bustling city, the car changed direction on a small road near the coastline. On the 2-lane road in the lush forest, apart from the dim yellow streetlights, there was hardly a single car in sight. Occasionally, a few security guards on sensor cars would pass by them silently. Gradually, the sound of the waves seemed to come from the sky, and as the car moved forward, the sound became clearer and clearer. Finally, lights that looked like twinkling stars appeared in front of Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu looked at the lights and was shocked. He cried out involuntarily, Water block dragon lock array? Jia Ruidao was confused and asked, Brother Tang, what did you say? Tan Xiu took a deep breath, trying to calm his breathing. He turned to look at Jia Ruidao and asked, Is this the Everlasting Feast Hall? How much do you know about this restaurant? Jia Ruidao shook his head and said, Very few. The owner of this restaurant is definitely a mysterious dragon whose head and tail are hard to be seen. Legend has it that the Everlasting Feast Hall has existed since the beginning of Jingmen Island's development. Only, its scale has continued to expand. That's right, there's also a special case. What special case? Tan Xiu asked. Jia Ruidao lowered his voice and said, You can dine in this Everlasting Feast Hall. Even if it's a sky-high price, the food here is absolutely delicious. The wine here is a bejeweled nectar that makes people salivate. Those who come here, aside from those with money and status, there is another kind of people who can enter. That is, martial arts practitioners. Martial arts practitioners? Tan Xiu was confused by Jia Ruidao's words. Jia Ruidao explained, Yes, they are martial arts practitioners. The most puzzling thing is that every martial arts practitioner who comes here can eat and drink for free as long as they can pass through the 1,000 revolution array set up by the restaurant owner. 1,000 revolution array? Tan Xiu's heart shook violently as his complexion instantly turned pale. His mind couldn't help but recall the days in the immortal world. He recalled the martial arts field in the towering palace, and the figure of the little girl in white fluttering in the wind. In the dark, that young and tender voice lingered in his ears. Master, Yen has tried to break through the 1,000 revolution array 3,600 times. How come she still can't break through? Did you act shamelessly and set up the little golden man in the Kuan position? Master, Yen has finally broken through. I'm very happy. You said that I've grown up after breaking through the 1,000 revolution array. Has Yen grown up? Master, Yen has personally brewed this 100 flowers pure wine. Please have a taste, Master. Tan Xiu's eyes were filled with a glimmer of sparkling and translucent light. 6,500 years. It had been 6,500 years. His favorite disciple, the one who helped him find the 10,000-year ice soul, had rushed alone into the Dead Sea of Netherworld. Since then, there had been no news of her. He had been sad for 6,500 years, and vowed that he would never accept a personal disciple again. Impossible! Even though I only taught her the 1,000 revolution array. even though the water block dragon array is my own creation, and I only taught it to her. But this should only be a coincidence, a coincidence. Tan Xiu kept repeating this sentence in his heart. Soon, the Mercedes-Benz car was parked in the spacious parking lot. Jia Yele, who had been waiting for a long time, stepped forward and opened the door. He then looked at Tan Xiu and his father coming out. "Dad, Grandmaster Tang, the box has been booked. We're just waiting for you." Jia Ruidao slowly nodded. He looked at Tan Xiu and said, "Grandmaster Tang, let's go together." Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, "Tell me the box number. I'm a bit bored and want to go out for a walk. Wait for me to get some fresh air. I'll go to the box to find you." This, Jia Ruidao hesitated. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "Just go. I'll be fine." Jia Ruidao nodded and said, "If that's the case, then we'll go in first. Brother Tang, if there's anything, just call me first." "All right." Tan Xiu nodded without a word. After sending off Jia Ruidao and his disciple, Tan Xiu identified the direction. He passed through the forest trail, bypassed the fountain square, and went straight to the coastline. The starlight filled the sky, illuminating the sparkling sea surface. Thousands of meters away from the coastline, a lone boat was drifting along with the waves. Tan Xiu's eyes were sharp. He could clearly see that there was a thin figure inside the lone boat. Looking at it, there was a thick sense of desolation and loneliness. Tan Xiu took a deep breath and sat cross-legged on the beach. The great Tao is 1,000 trials and tribulations, cutting through thistles and thorns. The heavens do not move, my heart is tranquil. Myriad sects return to the heart. The great sorrow and great joy clear heart incantations surged in Tan Xiu's heart. The heaven and earth spiritual chi from all directions roared and rushed over, as though a clear spring was washing his rippling heart. 10 minutes later, on the lone boat a kilometer away, the countenance of the gorgeous girl sitting cross-legged suddenly changed. A surprised look flashed in her starry eyes as she quickly turned her head to look at the coastline. She was keenly aware that the heaven and earth spiritual chi around her was unexpectedly rushing toward the figure sitting cross-legged on the shore. Chapter 81. Under the starry night sky, the alluring young lady floated up on the sparkling surface of the sea like a fairy from the 9 heavens. She tapped the surface of the sea with the tip of her foot and walked on the waves, hurrying toward the figure sitting cross-legged on the shoreline. A dozen breaths later, the gorgeous girl had already walked a kilometer away from Tan Xiu. She stopped a dozen meters away from Tang Xiu. Her pair of bright eyes carefully sized up Tang Xiu a few times, and then carefully took out a painting from her bosom. After comparing it with Tang Xiu, she shook her head with slight disappointment, folded the painting, and put it back into her bosom. "Huh!" Tang Xiu's eyes opened in an instant as his callous eyes instantly stared at the alluring girl. He found that this girl, who looked to be in her 20s, had a much stronger cultivation than him, especially when she came to a dozen meters in front of him. "Who are you?" asked the gorgeous girl with her silvery bell-like voice. "I'm a guest who came here to eat," said Tan Xiu indifferently. "Who are you?" "I'm the owner of this place." The gorgeous girl smiled. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Gu Xiaoxue, also an immortal cultivator. What's your name? Who's your master?" "Tan Xiu, a loose cultivator." Tan Xiu cupped his fists. "Tan Xiu?" Gu Xiaoxue blinked and the face in the painting appeared in her mind again. The name was the same, but why did the face look different? She thought about it and felt that it should be the same name and surname, so she didn't delve into it. Instead, she smilingly said, "There are many martial artists who come to our everlasting feast hall, but only a few cultivators come here. The number of cultivators who have come to our place in the past 10 years is no more than 10. Tan Xiu's expression moved. He was keenly aware of the difference between the two titles from Gu Xiaoxue's mouth, cultivator and immortal cultivator. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Have you seen other cultivators?" "I have." Gu Xiaoxue nodded. "I also specifically went to many places to invite them to my everlasting feast hall as guests. Unfortunately, Cultivators who understand the Tao of alchemy and pharmacology are as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. As she spoke, her devastatingly beautiful face revealed a sense of disappointment. Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes and nodded. Since you're the owner of this place, can I ask you a question? Speak. Gu Xiaoxue smiled. Tan Xiu asked, before I came here, I looked at this place from the outside and found that you guys have set up a formation here. This formation is very powerful. It can cut off water, lock dragons, gather spirit, draw meridians, and borrow the sky. The 5 combined into one, forming this feng shui treasure land. What is the name of this formation? Gu Xiaoxue exclaimed in disbelief. You can actually see the existence of the water block dragon seal array? Oh my god! Are you a formation master? Bang bang! Tan Xiu's heart was beating wildly, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. It must be noted that he was the one who created the water block dragon seal array. Aside from him and his little disciple, no one else knew about it. However, how could this array appear on Earth? Who was it? Could it be her? A huge momentum rose steadily from Tan Xiu's body. In nearly an instant, the earth-shattering aura pressed down on Gu Xiaoxue. A bright light burst out from his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Tell me, who arranged this water block dragon seal array?" Gu Xiaoxue was stunned. Never once in her wildest dreams did she expect that this boy, who looked almost the same as her, with such a weak cultivation, could actually exude such a terrifying aura. This aura made her very uncomfortable. The intense killing intent contained within made her subconsciously retreat a few steps. "It's my master!" Tan Xiu shouted sternly, "Who's your master?" Gu Xiaoxue's brows slightly furrowed, and a bit of anger arose in her heart. She talked to Tan Xiu in a good manner, but he was actually so rude to her. She immediately snorted coldly and resisted the aura exuded by Tan Xiu. At the same time, she said with dissatisfaction, "Why should I tell you? Who are you to me, anyway? Let me tell you, don't think that you can bully me just because I'm a girl. It's very easy for me to defeat you with your cultivation." Tan Xiu's breath stagnated and he immediately retracted the aura he released. As the saying goes, a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. He admitted that he was not a match for the girl in front of him at all. Furthermore, he also realized that he lost his composure because he was too eager to know who arranged this water block dragon seal array. "I'm sorry, I forgot myself." Tan Xiu cupped his fists and said. Gu Xiaoxue coldly snorted and also retracted the aura she released. Then, she lightly said, "Who my master is none of your business. Also, I don't like your attitude. Hurry up and leave after you finish your meal. Don't come to us again later." Tan Xiu's complexion slightly changed as he lightly said, "I'm the guest and you're the host. The host should follow the guest's order. You should understand this truth. I don't eat and drink for free, so I'll naturally pay for it." Gu Xiaoxue frowned and said, "Then we don't welcome you here." Tan Xiu pondered and immediately said, "So, you want to set a threshold for me? Trying to shut me out?" "That's right." Gu Xiaoxue revealed a proud expression. Tan Xiu lightly said, "I heard that you have a 1,000 revolution array here. Anyone who can break through the 1,000 revolution array can eat and drink for free here. I think I can give it a try. Lead the way." "You!" The proud expression on Gu Xiaoxue's face froze. Her master was the one who set the rules of the 1,000 revolution array. Anyone who could successfully challenge it would become a VIP of the everlasting feast hall. Not only would they be exempted from all expenses, but they would also receive the best treatment. Tan Xiu calmly said, "What? I can't challenge it?" Gu Xiaoxue shook her head and said, "Of course you can. However, it's impossible for you to break through the 1,000 revolution array with your cultivation. Even if you can barely break through the first layer, you'll be severely injured if you don't die on the second layer. This 1,000 revolution array has a total of 7 layers. Only by breaking through all of them can you be considered as a success. So far, only 2 people have successfully broken through to the 4th layer. Both of them are powerhouses who have been cultivating for more than 100 years. Tan Xiu asked, Don't tell me you don't have a VIP here? Gu Xiaoxue shook her head and said, no. Whoever can break through the second layer and enter the third layer of the 1,000 Revolution Array is the winner. In the past decades, a total of 6 people have successfully broken through the second layer and entered the third layer. Tan Xiu rolled his eyes inwardly. He was the one who created this 1,000 Revolution Array, so how could he not know its power? Even if one had reached the immortal realm, it would be extremely difficult to break through from the first layer to the second layer. Even if an immortal with some strength entered the third layer, 80% of them would be severely injured or obliterated. I'll give it a try. Tan Xiu calmly said. Gu Xiaoxue indifferently said, it seems that you won't give up until you reach the Yellow River. Since you want to try, then give it a try. It just so happens that I'm quite bored now. Come with me. Tan Xiu didn't speak again. He followed behind Gu Xiaoxue and walked into the depths of the jungle. Along the way, they encountered a large number of security guards in black suits. When they saw Tan Xiu behind Gu Xiaoxue, each and every one of them revealed a strange expression. Strange, this is the first time we see the little boss with a strange young man, right? What's the origin of that young man? Is he worthy for the little boss to personally accompany him? The little boss has grown up. Could it be that she also yearns for men and women? The young man behind her doesn't look ordinary. How is that possible? Isn't the little boss always arrogant and disdainful of men? How come she's walking together with a strange young man? That young man looks good, but he's absolutely not worthy of our little boss. In my eyes, no one in this world is worthy of the little boss. A toad lusting after a swan's flesh. How can an ordinary man touch the fairy-like little boss? Not worthy. Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue's ears were sharp. Naturally, they heard the words of the security guards clearly. Gu Xiaoxue, who was walking in front, had her back facing Tan Xiu. The corner of her mouth was curved, and a deep smile crawled across her face. And Tan Xiu, who was behind her, smiled bitterly. Listening to the words of the security guards, he almost thought that he was a pile of cow dung. Gu Xiaoxue, this fresh flower, wanted to be inserted into his body. Pay, pay, pay. Tan Xiu drove this absurd thought out of his mind. His eyes moved from Gu Xiaoxue's side to the front. Those casual words also came out of his mouth. Your surname is Gu? It's Gu as in Gu, right? I once had an old friend who also had this surname. Gu Xiaoxue turned her head. Her eyes were filled with contempt as she stared at Tan Xiu. She once again walked forward. You don't need to flatter me. Breaking through the 1,000 Revolution Array is a sacred thing. Even if you smear honey on your mouth, I will not help you. Moreover, people with the surname Gu are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. I absolutely have no relationship with them. Tan Xiu asked, you have no relationship with them? Does that mean you followed your master's surname? Your master's surname is Gu? Of course. Gu Xiaoxue raised her chin and said. Tan Xiu deeply looked at Gu Xiaoxue's back. His previously calm heart once again rippled. His favorite disciple had the surname Gu, and this surname was given by him. Gu Xiaoxue, have you ever heard the name Gu Yenner? What? Gu Xiaoxue was stunned. She suddenly turned her head. Her eyes were incomparably sharp. She stared at Tan Xiu and said, Who are you? How do you know my master's name? Is it true? A storm was set off in Tan Xiu's heart. He incredulously looked at Gu Xiaoxue and hurriedly said, Tell me, where is your master now? Where is she? Gu Xiaoxue angrily replied, I don't know. Tan Xiu said with a sinking tone, Answer me. This question is very important to me. Gu Xiaoxue sneered and said, You haven't answered me yet. How do you know my master's name? I know. You should have heard it from an elder, right? Humph. My master has not been in contact with outsiders for the past 10 years. It's impossible for you to have seen her. Chapter 82. All kinds of thoughts churned in Tan Xiu's mind. The feeling of déjà vu towards Gu Xiaoxue's master was getting more and more intense. However, he faintly felt that the time was not right. He had been in the immortal world for 10,000 years, but only 1 year had passed on Earth. And 6,500 years ago, Gu Yen disappeared in the immortal world. Even if she accidentally came to Earth, it should be within a year on Earth. If she had been on Earth for decades, then wouldn't she be hundreds of thousands of years old in the immortal world? Tan Xiu felt that the matter was more and more fishy as he carefully analyzed it. He fell into silence while looking at Gu Xiaoshue's incomparably cold face. His EQ? Not enough. But his IQ was very high. He might be lacking when it came to dealing with people, but when it came to thinking about things, he was able to think about all aspects. Gu Xiaoshue was unwilling to say it, and he couldn't beat her. Therefore, he could only suppress his curiosity and no longer continue to ask. Of course, there was still a layer of worry in his heart. After all, even his woman and brother, who had been friends with him for hundreds of years, could betray him for benefits. Would that disciple still remember him as her master? After such a long time, would there still be a master and disciple relationship between them? Gu Xiaoshue looked at Tan Xiu's silent expression. A proud expression appeared on her face again. She hummed and said, "Actually, it's not impossible for you to see my master. As long as you can break through the third layer of the Thousand Revolution Array, I can take you to see her 3 months later. However, with your strength, let alone breaking through the third layer, I'm afraid you'll be seriously injured and have to withdraw from the second layer. Continue to lead the way." Tan Xiu's tone became extremely firm. Gu Xiaoshue said with a sneer, "You really won't turn back until you hit the southern wall. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Since you insist on going your own way, don't blame me for not reminding you when you're seriously injured. Let's go." They walked forward for 100 meters. A security guard in a suit stopped them. "Little boss, Grandmaster Xiao and Grandmaster Miao are here. They're waiting for you in front of the Thousand Revolution Array." Gu Xiaoshue frowned and said, "Why are they here again?" 2 years ago, they were trapped in the second layer of the Thousand Revolution Array and were unable to break into the third layer. Moreover, they were seriously injured at that time. Could it be that in these 2 years, not only did they recover from their injuries, their cultivation also advanced? The security personnel said, "It looks like it's true." Gu Xiaoshue turned her head, glanced at Tan Xiu, and then walked towards the direction of the Thousand Revolution Array in large strides. She had been very bored and lonely recently. Someone else was taking care of the everlasting feast hall's business, so she only cultivated every day. She had thought that it would be interesting to meet Tan Xiu today, but she did not expect that there would be 2 more. In the depths of the forest, surrounded by the lush forest, was a square. It wasn't big, but there were some jade stones placed in every corner of the square. At the edge of the square, 2 middle-aged men were sitting cross-legged. Their deep eyes constantly swept across the square in front of them. "Brother Miao, how much certainty do you have this time?" Xiao Mingzhen broke the silence and asked. Miao Wentong said confidently, 80%. Xiao Mingzhen was surprised. "Are you that confident?" Miao Wenong said with a faint smile, "Brother Xiao, I'm afraid you're more confident than me, right? People who haven't broken through the Thousand Revolution Array may not know that this Thousand Revolution Array is actually not a real killing array, but an array used by cultivators to train their disciples. As long as you don't rashly break through it, you won't have to worry about your life. It really doesn't matter if you get injured. I think you should have benefited a lot from the Thousand Revolution Array 2 years ago, right?" Xiao Mingzhen nodded and said with a smile, "Indeed. The person who created this Thousand Revolution Array is definitely a genius in the cultivation world. His strength must be extremely amazing. To be honest, if possible, I really want to worship the person who created this Thousand Revolution Array as my master." "Ah, great minds think alike." Miao Wentong laughed. "You two came uninvited. Don't tell me you want to break through the Thousand Revolution Array again? If I remember correctly, you have already broken through it 3 times. According to my master's rules, the 4th person who tries to break through the Thousand Revolution Array needs to pay a 1,000,000 yuan fee. If you want to break through, you must pay." Gu Xiaoshue slowly walked over with Tan Xiu. Her expression was tranquil, but her words were a bit cold. Xiao Mingzhen and Miao Wentong saw Gu Xiaoshue and Tan Xiu. Although they were surprised about Tan Xiu's origin, they still stood up as fast as they could. They picked up the suitcases beside them and handed them over to Gu Xiaoxue, saying, "We've prepared the money. Please accept it." Gu Xiaoxue made a gesture to several security personnel nearby. Several security personnel quickly arrived and took the 2 suitcases. After checking and confirming that the amount of money was correct, they quickly took the 2 suitcases and left. "Heir, go and ring the 100 rings bell." "Yes." A big man cupped his fists and strode toward the distance. A few minutes later, bang, bang, bang. The bell's 27 rings reverberated in the world, passing into the ears of everyone in the everlasting feast hall. Many guests came out of their boxes, looking surprised as they listened to the bell and inquired the attendants about the reason. "The 100 rings bell. Someone wants to break through the 1,000 revolution array. 27 rings, 9 for each person. A total of 3 people want to break through the 1,000 revolution array. Martial artists are going to break through the array to select the VIPs. The 100 rings bell has rung. All guests can go to the scene to watch. Today, the guests will be able to broaden their horizons." Along with the excited explanation from the attendants, the guests in the 108 boxes of the everlasting feast hall were led by the security personnel as they rushed toward the 1,000 revolution array. In one of the boxes, Jia Ruidao and his 3 apprentices were absent-mindedly listening to the attendant's explanation. Today, the most important thing for them was to serve Tan Xiu well and make Tan Xiu satisfied. Otherwise, in case Tan Xiu were to quit, not only would they go bankrupt, but they would also lose all their reputation. They would never be able to lift their heads in the professional gambler circle for the rest of their lives. 3 guests, do you want to go and have a look? The young and beautiful waitress asked after explaining the situation to them. Jia Ruidao impatiently waved his hand and said, "We're not interested. Just go and do your thing." "Wait a minute." Gong Dalong suddenly stopped the attendant as he looked at Jia Ruidao and said, "Master, as far as I know, Grandmaster Tang seems to know some kung fu. Perhaps he is the one who is going to break through the 1,000 revolution array. Just think about it. Breaking through the 1,000 revolution array is something that only happens once in a year or 2. But Grandmaster Tang has come and someone has already broken through. I think the possibility of it being Grandmaster Tang is very high." Jia Ruidao's expression moved. He also heard that Tan Xiu knew kung fu. He immediately nodded and said, "Then, let's go and have a look. Even if it's not Tan Xiu, I'm afraid he will also go and have a look." In the jungle behind the everlasting feast hall, a large number of guests had arrived, and the entire edge of the square was already crowded with people. Dozens of security personnel of the everlasting feast hall blocked everyone outside the square, forbidding anyone from entering even half a step. Gu Xiaoxue crossed her arms. Her eyes occasionally glanced at Tan Xiu, but most of them were lingering between Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wenheng. After 2 years, she really wanted to know how much progress they had made. Could they successfully break through the 3rd layer of the 1,000 revolution array? "Little boss, it's almost time." The security captain came to Gu Xiaoxue's side and whispered. Gu Xiaoxue slightly nodded. She then looked at Tan Xiu, Xiao Mingjin, and Miao Wenheng as she lightly said, "Today, the 3 of you want to break through the 1,000 revolution array. Regardless of life or death, it has nothing to do with our everlasting feast hall. Whoever can break through to the 3rd floor will be a distinguished guest of our everlasting feast hall." 3 people? Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wenheng looked at each other in dismay. At the same time, their gazes were cast on Tan Xiu. Xiao Mingjin hesitated for a moment as he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "Little brother, do you also want to challenge the 1,000 revolution array? This isn't a joke. If you don't have any real skills, you might really lose your life in there." Miao Wenheng also nodded and said, "Yes. Young people should be more pragmatic and not bite off more than they can chew. Although this 1,000 revolution array is helpful to cultivators, but without strength, even if you don't die, you will still be injured." "I know." Tan Xiu looked at the 2 people who judged people by their appearance, but he couldn't feel any disgust in his heart. He was the one who created the 1,000 revolution array, so how could he not know about it? However, he believed that he would be able to widen their horizons. Upon seeing Tan Xiu's appearance, Xiaomingzhen and Miao Wentong secretly smiled wryly inside. They were loyal to the sun and the moon, but Tan Xiu simply didn't listen to their words. Forget it. A trace of anger gushed out from the bottom of Xiaomingzhen's heart as he indifferently said, "Since little brother is unwilling to give up until he reaches the Yellow River, then it's useless for us to say anything more." After saying that, he turned around and cupped his fists toward Gu Xiaoxue, and then strode into the square. The entire square looked like there were only some jades placed randomly. But those jades, as well as the array patterns that were invisible to the naked eye, arranged into the 1,000 revolution array. The moment Xiaomingzhen stepped into the 1,000 revolution array, his footsteps suddenly stopped. After a moment, he began to walk again. In the eyes of the surrounding onlookers, Xiaomingzhen was like a headless fly as he repeatedly walked within the radius of more than 10 square meters. But for Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue, as well as Miao Wentong, who had once challenged the 1,000 revolution array, it was a different scene. Inside the 1,000 revolution array, the moment Xiaomingzhen stepped inside, it was as if he had arrived in another world. Looking at the scenery of the spring, where the grasses were growing and the nightingales were flying, and feeling the gentle spring breeze caressing his face, his spirit was highly concentrated. He had once challenged the 1,000 revolution array, so he was very familiar with the first layer. Don't look at this beautiful mountain forest, it actually contained countless murderous intentions. Suddenly, a spring thunder exploded out of nowhere. The bright and beautiful sunshine was covered by the floating dark clouds, and the entire world turned a lot darker. A drizzle floated down from the sky, and this drizzle was very corrosive. "It's coming!" Xiaomingzhen's heart tightened. His eyes vigilantly looked all around. He suddenly found that in the surrounding woods, a spotted snake as thick as an arm was coming toward him. Humph! Having experienced this once, Xiaomingzhen didn't panic. He reached out his hand and took out a yellow paper talisman from his bosom. With a flick of his wrist, the yellow paper talisman turned into a raging inferno, violently rushing toward the spotted snakes from all directions. Hiss! The spotted snakes hissed in the sea of fire as they lost their lives in the sea of fire. But even more spotted snakes rushed forward wave after wave. Their bright red tongues and cold eyes were firmly locked on Xiaomingzhen. However, a sharp dagger appeared in Xiaomingzhen's hand. As he moved, the spotted snakes that were rushing toward him were all killed by him. Found it. Chapter 83. A few minutes later, his sharp eyes discovered a dark yellow snake that was only as thick as a wrist among the group of snakes. This little snake had a purple crown on its head. Under the protection of the group of snakes, it hissed continuously, like a commander on the battlefield, commanding the soldiers to kill. Go! The dagger in Xiaomingzhen's hand instantly left his hand and accurately shot the dark yellow snakes 7 inches away from him. Buzz! With the death of the small snake, the world before Xiaomingzhen's eyes changed. The world that was originally overflowing with the scent of spring was now filled with flowers and the scorching sun. Outside the 1,000 revolution array, Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes as he looked at Xiaomingzhen, who was walking 7 to 8 steps towards the center of the square. He secretly nodded. Although he couldn't see the situation inside the array, but for Xiaomingzhen to be able to quickly pass through the first layer, it could be considered good. Gu Xiaoxue and Miao Wenong shared the same thought. Brother Xiao, you're really amazing to be able to pass the first level in such a short time. If it were me, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy. The first layer of the 1,000 revolution array was the spring killing array, and the second layer was the summer killing array. I wonder what the third floor is? Miao Wentong could not help but sigh. Gu Xiaoxue squinted at him and lightly said, the 1,000 revolution array has a total of 7 layers. The first 4 layers correspond to the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Behind them was naturally autumn slaying and winter slaying. He's already so old, and this is his second time challenging the array. If he's still slow, it'll be too embarrassing. Miao Wentong's mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. It seemed that he was older than Xiaomingzhen. If he used more time than Xiaomingzhen to rush through the first layer, then he would really be disgracing himself. The surrounding crowd of onlookers looked at Xiao Mingjun with inexplicable expressions on their faces. Seeing him randomly walking all over the place, playing the act of burning yellow paper into a ball of fire, and then taking out a dagger to hack and slash, everyone couldn't help but not know whether to laugh or cry. He can't have lost his mind, right? Why did you do such a strange thing? What kind of trick are you playing? You want all of us to come here just to look at this thing? What 1,000 revolution array? It looks like it's real. I think he's just trying to mystify us. It's so boring. It was a good meal, but it turned into a fool's play. How boring. What the hell is this everlasting feast hall doing? Are you kidding us? Gu Xiaoxue listened to the discussion of the crowd and immediately made a gesture to the security captain. Immediately, the security captain loudly said, "Gentlemen, you don't understand the reason. Let me explain it to you. This 1,000 revolution array is divided into 7 layers." As he explained, the people around him suddenly understood. However, they still held a skeptical attitude towards the mysteries of the 1,000 revolution array. Some people, in order to verify the authenticity of the array, attempted to break through the security guards and step inside. However, because there were too many guests, the security personnel were unable to stop everyone. More than a dozen people rushed into the 1,000 revolution array. A second or two after they entered, they stopped in unison. In fact, their bodies stiffened and their eyes widened in disbelief. "There, get them out," Gu Xiaoxue shouted. Suddenly, more than a dozen security personnel rushed into the 1,000 revolution array. They quickly appeared at the side of the dozens of lifeless guests and violently dragged them out of the array. Heavens! I didn't drink too much, did I? How come inside? Illusion, it's definitely an illusion. How can there be a world inside? It's really an array? Amazing. It's really amazing. Honey, pinch me. I want to feel the pain. There's really an array. As if awakened from a dream, the 10 people shouted one after another. The other guests suddenly understood that the square in front of them was probably really arranged into an array. Tan Xiu remained silent as he watched Xiao Mingjun constantly moving inside the 1,000 revolution array, constantly waving his dagger to attack. He found that the arrangement of the 1,000 revolution array here was extremely simple and crude. Compared to the 1,000 revolution array he had created, it was like heaven and earth apart. He was even confident that if he were to go inside, he would definitely be able to break the array easily. 20 minutes later, Tan Xiu's expression shifted as he looked at Xiao Mingjun, who was approaching the center of Guangzhou a dozen steps. Miao Wentong's expression turned solemn. He looked at Xiao Mingjun's pale face as a bit of worry emerged in his heart, because he could see that Xiao Mingjun was very strenuous, yet he had already broken through the 2nd layer and rushed to the 3rd layer. This showed that his strength was much stronger than 2 years ago, even to the extent that he had reached the everlasting feast hall's VIP status. Boom, a loud explosion sounded. Xiao Mingjun, who had just broken through the 3rd layer of the 1,000 revolution array, was directly thrown out. His body heavily smashed on the edge of the square. After half a minute, he struggled to prop up his arms and spurted out a mouthful of blood. "Brother Xiao, are you okay?" Miao Wentong dashed to Xiao Mingjun's side. Seeing that he was about to get up, he quickly reached out to support his arm and asked with a concerned expression. Xiao Mingjun spurted out a mouthful of blood. His complexion turned slightly rosy as he bitterly shook his head and said, "I'm fine. But I didn't break through the 3rd layer. This 1,000 revolution array is really abnormal." Miao Wenong gently patted his shoulder and said, "Don't bite off more than you can chew. You can break through the 3rd layer, that's already very amazing. I don't even have the confidence to break through the 3rd layer. Not to mention that you've finally become the everlasting feast hall's VIP. Even if you can't eat later, you can still come here to eat and drink for free." Hee, Xiao Mingjun grinned. His mood was much better. Miao Wenong stretched his muscles as he walked toward the 1,000 revolution array and said with a smile, "It's my turn now. I hope I can reach your level and experience the might of the 1,000 revolution array's 3rd layer." Tan Xiu watched Miao Wenong enter the 1,000 revolution array. He then walked to Xiao Mingzhen's side and grabbed his wrist. Under Xiao Mingzhen's flabbergasted expression, he lightly said, "Your internal injury is serious. You need to recuperate your qi and blood in time. With your cultivation, you'll be able to recover in 10 days or 2 months." Xiao Mingzhen pulled his hand back and said with dissatisfaction, "Nonsense. I know my own situation very well. This kind of injury is very normal for us cultivators." Tan Xiu lightly said, "Yes, it's normal. But it's not worth it to waste time to recuperate. I can give you a healing prescription. As long as you take the medicine according to my prescription, your internal injury will be completely healed in 3 days. However, since you're quite rich, I'll charge you a fee." Xiao Mingzhen stared blankly for a moment. He looked at Tan Xiu again as he asked with a bewildered expression, "Are you really sure that I'll be able to recover in 3 days?" Tan Xiu resolutely said. Xiao Mingzhen said with a sinking tone, "All right, name your price." 1 million. Tan Xiu calmly said. Xiao Mingzhen exclaimed, 1 million? 1 million for a prescription? You might as well rob someone. Tan Xiu lightly said, "Buy it or not, it's up to you. If it wasn't because of your sincere tone and persuading me not to break the 1,000 revolution array, let alone 1 million, even if you give me 100 million, I wouldn't care about you." "You?" Xiao Mingzhen was furious. However, he was, after all, a person with status. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He then said with a sinking tone, "I promise you I'll buy it. However, you need to give me the prescription first. After I take the medicine, if the effect is really like what you said, I'll give you double the price." "It's a deal." Tan Xiu nodded as he looked at Miao Wenong in the 1,000 revolution array. Gu Xiaoshue's black brows slightly wrinkled. After listening to the conversation between Tan Xiu and Xiao Mingzhen, her line of sight never left Tan Xiu. After being silent for a long time, she leaned toward Tan Xiu and asked in a low voice, Do you know pharmacology?" "A bit." Tan Xiu casually said. Gu Xiaoshue quickly asked, "Twilight nightmare, do you know about this disease?" "Twilight nightmare?" Tan Xiu's expression stagnated. He incredulously looked at Gu Xiaoshue and exclaimed, "How do you know about Twilight Nightmare? This is Shade Demon Zhu Wushou's most insidious killing move." Gu Xiaoshue frowned and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. But I want to know, can you treat this disease?" "I can't." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "He indeed couldn't treat it. It's not that he didn't know how to treat it, but he didn't have the means to treat it. Shade Demon Zhu Wushou was the immortal world's apex supreme. His cultivation was almost comparable to his former self. But Zhu Wushou's most powerful move was the Twilight Nightmare. Even if one was lucky enough to survive this killing move, they would fall into a nightmare. Occasionally, they would wake up, but there was no way for them to completely recover. To treat it, 2 extremely rare treasures were needed, Chrono Crystal and Demonic Revival Grass. The Demonic Revival Grass grew in the demon world's heart, which was a place with extreme Yin energy. Apart from the few supremes of the demon world, who could barely reach the demon world's heart, it was simply very difficult for others to enter, let alone to obtain the Demonic Revival Grass from there. Chrono Crystal. Rumor had it that a spatial crack existed between the immortal and divine worlds. But apart from deities, no immortal dared to go there. Because even a little bit of carelessness would cause one's soul to fly away and scatter in the spatial crack, consigning them to eternal damnation. To concoct the holy medicine to treat the Twilight Nightmare, one must have the Chrono Crystal and the Demonic Revival Grass as the 2 main ingredients. Otherwise, no one would be able to cure it. Even Zhu Wushou didn't have the means to cure it. Gu Xiaoshue looked at Tan Xiu with disappointment. Once again, she revealed a distant look and looked at Miao Wentong inside the 1,000 revolution array. More than half an hour later, Miao Wentong successfully broke into the 3rd layer. Although the time he spent was longer than Xiao Mingzhen, the time he persisted in the 3rd layer, Autumn Kill, was much longer than Xiao Mingzhen. Cough, cough. Miao Wenong coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. His complexion was as pale as paper as he barely managed to walk out of the 1,000 revolution array. "Brother Miao, are you all right?" Xiao Mingzhen supported him and asked with concern. Miao Wentong shook his head and squeezed out a smile. There's no danger to my life. But my injuries are serious. I won't be able to recover without 2 or 3 months of recuperation. Chapter 84. Xiao Mingjun looked up and glanced at Tan Xiu. He hesitated for a moment before he told Tan Xiu's words to Miao Wenong. Finally, he said, I've promised him that if his prescription is really effective, I'll give him 2 million as a reward. Miao Wentong sneered and said, Are you kidding me? If there really is such a holy healing medicine in this world, let alone 2 million for a prescription, even if it's 20 million, I'd still be willing to buy it. Tan Xiu lightly said, You can try it. If it's really effective, I hope you won't go back on your words. I'll be waiting for you to send me 20 million. Humph. Ignorant brat. Miao Wentong coldly said. Tan Xiu coldly glanced at him as he turned around and walked toward the 1,000 revolution array. Miao Wentong loudly said, You're Tan Xiu, right? I advise you to give up. Although I don't know how powerful you are, but with your age, trying to break through the 1,000 revolution array is like looking for a beating. There are a lot of people here, don't make a fool of yourself. Brother Miao. Xiao Mingjun quickly pulled Miao Wentong's arm and whispered. Although he looked down on Tan Xiu and felt that Tan Xiu was too arrogant, but with their status, they wouldn't do anything that would be beneath their status. Gu Xiaoshue's mouth curled up as she faintly smiled while looking at Tan Xiu's back. She was secretly helpless in her heart. She had felt Tan Xiu's imposing manner. Although it was very strong, but with her cultivation, she could naturally feel Tan Xiu's strength. Therefore, she was very sure that there was a huge gap between Tan Xiu and Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wenong. The two of them were barely able to break through to the 3rd layer, but Tan Xiu might not even be able to enter the 2nd layer. In the crowd, Ija Ruidao and his 3 apprentices had already noticed Tan Xiu. However, he didn't expect that Tan Xiu would also challenge the 1,000 revolution array. Therefore, he and his 3 apprentices didn't come out to meet Tan Xiu. Daoist Jia was a shrewd old man. Naturally, he also wanted to see the depth of Tan Xiu's strength. However, when he saw Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wentong coming out of the 1,000 revolution array, a bad feeling arose in his heart. This was because he was going to make a bet with his opponent tomorrow. Before the bet, the most taboo thing to do was to exhaust his mind, energy, and body. If Tan Xiu was injured, what would happen to the bet tomorrow? We must stop it. Jia Ruidao squeezed out from the crowd and rushed toward Tan Xiu. Then he shouted, Brother Tang, don't go inside. I have something to say. Tan Xiu's footsteps suddenly came to a halt. There was a puzzled look in his eyes as he looked at the approaching Jia Ruidao and asked, What do you want to say? Jia Ruidao forced a smile and said, Brother Tang, we still have to gamble with Chen Kai's people tomorrow. If by any chance something bad happens to you in the 1,000 revolution array, then tomorrow, you don't believe me? Tan Xiu's complexion turned cold as he said with a sinking tone. Jia Ruidao forced a smile and said, It's not that I don't believe you. It's because a professional gambler's biggest taboo is to exhaust his mind, energy, and body before the match. Only when you're in a good state of mind can you win every bet. Tan Xiu said without being salty or light, You've been resting well every day. How come I don't see you winning? I've already made up my mind. Don't say anything. After that, he turned around and stepped into the 1,000 revolution array. At the side, Miao Wenong burst into laughter. Brother Xiao, did you see that? Even Tan Xiu's companion doesn't believe him. Do you think he has the ability to break the 1,000 revolution array? Just wait. We'll have a joke to watch. Xiao Mingjun forced a smile and secretly sighed. Obviously, he also agreed with Miao Wentong's statement. Inside the 1,000 revolution array, the moment Tan Xiu stepped inside, he wasn't surprised by the changes in the scenery of the world. After looking around, his eyes locked on a towering ancient tree. As his toes touched the ground, his body was like an arrow released from a bowstring. In less than a breath's time, he had already sprinted to his destination. Puff! A sharp Mitsubishi Army knife appeared in his hand as he stabbed the ancient tree's trunk with the tip of the knife. At this moment, a small, dark yellow snake was pierced through 7 inches below its head. Buzz! The scenery of the world changed as the hot summer appeared. Hundreds of flowers bloomed and hundreds of birds sang. Tan Xiao sized up the surrounding environment. His eyes finally fell on a distant path. In the middle of that path, there was a stone tablet embedded in the ground. Almost without the slightest hesitation, he sprinted with his fastest speed. His current cultivation was not enough. Before he had the valiant strength, he could only fight against time. In a flash, he sprinted to the front of the stone tablet. He clenched his fist and used all his strength to punch the stone tablet. Boom! The stone tablet was smashed. The lions and tigers that had just appeared in the surroundings instantly vanished. But the surrounding environment had also changed. Outside the 1,000 Revolution Array, everyone's eyes were fixed on Tan Xiao. They looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. Their eyes revealed an inconceivable expression. They clearly remembered that Xiao Mingjin and Miao Weneng had walked more than 20 steps toward the center of the square, and it took them more than half an hour. How is this possible? Miao Weneng uttered a cry of surprise. His face was filled with an inconceivable expression. His eyeballs almost popped out from his eye sockets. Even more exaggerated was that, in order to prove that it was not an illusion, he raised his arm and rubbed his eyes. Then he looked at Tan Xiao in the square again. It's not an illusion. How did he do it? Xiao Mingjin's heart was also thumping at this moment. His face was also filled with shock. His lips squirmed a few times as he bitterly said, 10 seconds. He only used 10 seconds to successfully break through the second layer and enter the third layer. Is he still a human? How did he do it? How did he do it? At the side, Gu Xiaoxue was tongue-tied as she looked at Tan Xiao's figure. A storm was set off in her heart. She clearly remembered what her master had told her. In this world, except for one person, no one could easily break through the layers. Even the most powerful group of super experts in the other world couldn't do it. Even Master could only barely reach this level, right? Who is he? How could he see through the mystery of the 1,000 Revolution Array? How could he find the core of each layer in an instant? Gu Xiaoxue's vision moved away from Tang Xiao's body with difficulty. She looked at the shocked expression on the faces of the people around her. Only then did she confirm that she was not dreaming. There really was someone who broke through the first 2 layers of the 1,000 Revolution Array in less than 10 seconds and entered the third layer, the Autumn Strike. At this moment, Tan Xiao was not aware of the shock of the people outside. In front of him, the scene of the fruitful autumn kill array had already appeared. It was an orchard. The fruit trees were full of glistening yellow and bright red fruits. The faint fruity fragrance made people salivate. A group of wild geese flew over the orchard, leaving only a burst of calls. The effect of this simplified version is really bad. Tan Xiao was not in a hurry to act this time. Instead, he stared at a direction and quietly waited. Trespassing into this array, die. A roar came from the inside of the orchard. A ferocious-looking big man, whose whole body was wrapped in chains, quickly rushed out of the orchard. He waved a mace in his hand. The sharp spikes on the mace were suffused with a faint cold light. Tan Xiao squatted down and casually picked up a small stone from the ground. He faintly smiled and said, "When I first created this array, I really spent a lot of effort. But I left a secret door in each layer. Do you believe that I can defeat you with just a small stone?" Ridiculous. The ferocious-looking big man seemed to have spiritual wisdom. He waved the mace and fiercely smashed it toward Tan Xiao's head. Tan Xiao flicked his finger, and the stone instantly hit the ferocious-looking big man's throat. Almost in an instant, the ferocious-looking big man's body suddenly froze. The mace was only a foot away from Tan Xiao's head, directly suspended. With a gust of autumn wind, the ferocious-looking big man, with a face full of unwillingness, turned into particles and drifted away with the wind. Buzz! The scenery of the world changed again. The cool autumn wind also became incomparably cold. The place he was in was no longer a fruitful orchard. Instead, it was a world of ice and snow. White snow as far as the eye can see. Winter kill? Tang Xiu straightly sat cross-legged and inserted the sharp dagger directly into the snowy ground in front of him on the left. Oh, rolling wolf howls came from the distant horizon. In just a few seconds, in the sky full of flying snow, countless snow wolves were rushing over. Outside the 1,000 revolution array, Miao Wentong's body swayed a few times. Because of his unstable qi and blood, coupled with the shock in his heart, he suddenly sat down on the ground. He seemed to be not aware of his own embarrassment. Looking at Tan Xiu, who once again walked 6 or 7 steps toward the square, his heart seemed to explode with thunder. The 4th layer? It must be the 4th layer. Miao Wentong suddenly remembered that before Tan Xiu entered the 1,000 revolution array, he mocked and ridiculed him. He originally thought that Tan Xiu would not be able to pass through the 1st layer. But he never dreamed that Tan Xiu not only passed through the 1st layer, but also passed through the 2nd layer, the 3rd layer, and directly rushed into the 4th layer. In a flash. He really wanted to see a crack appear in the ground in front of him. If there was, he would definitely crawl into it and never come out again to disgrace himself. Xiao Mingzhen's mouth twitched. He turned his head with difficulty and looked at Gu Xiaoxue. At this moment, Gu Xiaoxue was stunned. She foolishly looked at Tan Xiu and almost raised her hand to slap herself. Because she was clear about Tan Xiu's cultivation. But she never dreamed that Tan Xiu could actually break into the 4th layer. The 1,000 revolution array was not an ordinary array. Even a cultivator who was more powerful than her might not necessarily be able to break into the 4th layer. But how did Tan Xiu do it? How could he break into the 4th layer? Gu Xiaoxue remembered what she said to Tan Xiu before. A tide of regret surged in her heart. If she knew that Tan Xiu could break into the 4th layer, how could she bring shame to herself? A frog at the bottom of a well. Gu Xiaoxue's mind suddenly thought of this idiom. She felt that this idiom was really appropriate to describe her. Miss Gu Tan Xiu. Chapter 85. Gu Xiaoxue was startled by Xiao Mingzhen's sudden question. After calming herself down, she forced a smile and said, "You've already guessed it, so why do you still ask me? To be honest, his cultivation is far worse than yours. But who would have thought that he could actually break through to the 4th layer?" Is it really the 4th layer? Xiao Mingzhen was dumbfounded. He had a few speculations in his heart, but now that it was confirmed, the shock in his heart had reached the point where it was difficult to increase again. His status was not ordinary, and his ability to judge people was even more formidable. But now, he found out that he had really misjudged this time. A person can't be judged by their appearance, just like the sea can't be measured with a pail. He was really wrong this time. Gu Xiaoxue said, "I don't want to admit it, but it's the truth." Xiao Mingzhen desperately swallowed his saliva. For a moment he didn't know what to say. He had seen a lot of cultivation geniuses before, but he had never seen or heard of such a monstrous talent like Tan Xiu. "I suspect that he should be an array grandmaster." Gu Xiaoxue hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "Are you kidding me?" Miao Wentong crawled up from the ground with difficulty and shouted with a somewhat hoarse voice. Gu Xiaoxue coldly glanced at him and snorted. If he's not an array grandmaster, how could he easily break the first 3 layers of the 1,000 revolution array? His cultivation is not high, I'm sure of it. Your cultivation is indeed high, but can you break through to the 4th layer? Miao Wentong was speechless. He only felt a burning sensation on his face. It was as if a pair of invisible slaps had slapped his square face from left to right. It was really painful. More than 10 meters away, Ruidao stared blankly at Tan Xiu's figure. His mouth was open so wide that even a duck's egg wouldn't be a problem. At his side, his eldest disciple, Gong Daong, whispered, "Master, Grandmaster Tang seems to be very powerful." He actually walked further into the square than the other two. Jia Ruidao slowly turned his head. The vacant look in his eyes disappeared a lot as he bitterly said, "What I don't want the most now is for him to rush to a higher layer. The higher the layer, the greater the possibility of him getting injured. I'm afraid his injuries will be more serious." Gong Delong was stunned and fell into silence. He understood that his master's concerns were right. If Tan Xiu's injuries were severe and delayed tomorrow's bet, then the two of them would really be finished. Inside the 1,000 Revolution Array, Tan Xiu looked at the approaching snow wolf, and the smile in his eyes deepened. If it was someone else, they would definitely be frightened out of their wits when they saw the snow wolves swarming towards them. However, he was different. He was the one who created the 1,000 Revolution Array, so he knew how to break it. Oh, the howls of the wolves joined together and pierced through the clouds. But strangely, the pack of wolves around him stopped a dozen meters away from Tan Xiu. Their green eyes glinted coldly, but they were not staring at Tan Xiu. Instead, they were staring at the Mitsubishi Army knife in front of Tan Xiu. Hooray! What was important was the formation pattern and the formation eye. Tan Xiu knew where the formation eye was, and he was also clear about the engraving of the formation pattern. The Mitsubishi Army knife in front of him on the left coincided with the formation eye and was located at the connection point of the formation pattern. As long as the Mitsubishi Army knife was not pulled out, the surrounding wolves would not be able to rush over. And the fourth layer's winter killing, the most important thing was time. An incense stick worth of time. As long as he could hold on for an incense stick worth of time, the fourth layer would collapse by itself. So, an incense stick worth of time passed. Buzz. As the surrounding scene changed, the world of ice and snow dissipated and was replaced by a yellow dirt path. On the side of the path was a large river. The river was surging and surging. An old man, wearing a straw raincoat and holding a fishing rod, sat alone on the bow of the boat in the river, quietly fishing. When Tan Xiu's figure appeared on the riverside, the boat moved without any wind and slowly approached Tan Xiu. "Ferryman," Tan Xiu calmly said. The old man smiled slightly and said, "Welcome, it's my honor to serve you." Tan Xiu flew to the boat and calmly said, "Cross the river." But the old man nodded and smiled. The boat glided and gradually sailed to the middle of the river. However, at this moment, the old man on the bow suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a gust of wind. The boat began to shake violently. In the river around the boat, swordfish constantly jumped up, and their jumping trajectory happened to be aimed at Tan Xiu. At the same time, a flock of flame birds flew in the sky. This kind of bird was burning with fire, and its sharp claws spread open as it rushed toward Tan Xiu. "Xiu, Mom misses you so much." The scene in front of Tan Xiu changed slightly, and he appeared at home. And his mother, who was crying and washing her face, rushed up to him in surprise. Tan Xiu coldly snorted. As his aura suddenly rose, the surrounding scene instantly shattered. He had experienced this kind of illusion countless times. If it was in the past, he might be immersed in this environment for a long time. Even if he knew that it was not his real home, and not his real mother, he still could not help but be affectionate with his mother for a moment. But now, he had returned from the immortal world, and it was easy for him to see his mother. Therefore, he did not need this kind of illusion, nor did he have the slightest burden. "Die for me." The Mitsubishi Army knife was waved again and again. Tan Xiu's figure also moved quickly. His current cultivation was very weak, and his strength was only 3,000 jin. It was very strenuous for him to kill these swordfish and flame birds. If he was not careful, he would be seriously injured or even killed. But he had rich experience in fighting, and this kind of scene was child's play for him. Not to mention, the requirement for this pass was not to kill all the swordfish and flame birds, but to persist until the boat reached the other side, which would be very fast. Outside the 1,000 Revolution Array, Gu Xiaoxue was already shocked and numb by Tang Xiu's lightning speed. Originally, she thought that for Tan Xiu to be able to break into the fourth layer, he should have reached his limit. However, Tan Xiu's success once again made her at a loss. Gu Xiaoxue's strength was very strong. She had reached the point where she could kill Tan Xiu with a wave of her hand. But she asked herself honestly. She absolutely could not do it to Tan Xiu's level. Since she started to break into the fifth layer at the age of 10, she had done it hundreds and thousands of times in the past 10 years, but never once did she break into the fifth layer. What was the world of the fifth layer? She had heard of it, but she had never seen it before. Even an array grandmaster can't do it to this point, right? Gu Xiaoxue regretted. She regretted that she should not have looked down on Tan Xiu before. Because Tan Xiu's heaven-defying ability to break into the array had broken her common sense. At this moment, Miao Wentong's complexion has become deathly pale. Looking at Xiao Mingjun beside him, he almost could not help but pull Xiao Mingjun and flee in distress. Disgraceful. He finally tasted the taste of disgraceful. That taste was very bitter, more bitter than gold thread. Idle. Xiao Mingjun's eyes were somewhat blurred as he muttered to himself. However, his words were like a sharp knife that fiercely stabbed into Miao Wentong's heart. The pain almost made him want to shed tears. As for the surrounding crowd, although there were a few people who left because it was too late, most of them were waiting. They did not know which layer Tan Xiu had broken into, but they were very clear that Tan Xiu's level was definitely higher than Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wentong's. Impossible! A cry of alarm came out from Gu Xiaoshue's mouth. Suddenly, everyone found that Tan Xiu's figure had moved closer to the center of the square by 7 or 8 meters. Xiao Mingjun turned his head and looked at Gu Xiaoxue, who had lost her self-control. He hurriedly asked, "Miss Gu, Tan Xiu, did he succeed again?" Gu Xiaoxue, who was shocked to the point of numbness, nodded and said. Xiao Mingjun blankly said, "The 5th layer?" He actually broke through the 5th layer and reached the 6th layer? Isn't this too terrifying? It's terrifying. Gu Xiaoshue's expression was complicated. Looking at Tan Xiu's figure, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. Recalling the various situations after meeting Tan Xiu, she suddenly realized that she had never been able to see through Tan Xiu. It was like looking at the reflection of the moon in the water. Tan Xiu's whole body seemed to be shrouded by an illusory and misty aura. After a moment, Tan Xiu walked out of the 1,000 Revolution array. His complexion was faintly pale, but he didn't seem to be in a difficult situation. The moment he came out, hundreds of eyes simultaneously fell on him. Now, am I qualified to be the Everlasting Feast Hall's VIP? Tan Xiu came before Gu Xiaoxue and calmly asked. Gu Xiaoxue subconsciously nodded. Then, she suddenly sobered up and hurriedly asked, Tan Xiu, your cultivation is obviously very low. How could you break through the 6th layer? You must know, since my master arranged the 1,000 Revolution array decades ago, although only a few people came to break through it, the 2 most powerful ones were barely able to break through to the 5th layer. No one has ever entered the 6th layer. How did you do it? Tan Xiu indifferently said, no comment. Gu Xiaoshue's heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. But looking at Tan Xiu's indifferent appearance, she was helpless even though she was angry inside. Tan Xiu no longer looked at her. His eyes shifted to Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wentong as he lightly said, I'll give you the prescription later. Remember your promise. After saying that, he glanced at the pleasantly surprised Jia Ruidao and his disciple before he walked toward the attic filled with a classical atmosphere outside the woods. Although he was not sure whether Gu Xiaoshue's master was his former disciple or not, he believed that there was absolutely a close relationship between the two. When he first heard the news about his favorite disciple, he was ecstatic. But after breaking through the 1,000 Revolution array, his heart finally calmed down. Thinking about how his former best friend and lover could betray him, what if Tan Xiu didn't dare to think about it? He couldn't accept such a blow. Therefore, he directly chose to give up on getting to the bottom of this matter. Now, the most important thing for him was to cultivate and strive to restore himself to his peak state. At that time, those who had hurt him and betrayed him would have to pay a painful price. He was not a ruthless person, but he was also not a soft-hearted person. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. But if people offend me, I'll pay them back tenfold. He prayed to the gods and Buddhas to bless those who had hurt him and wait for him to personally pay them back. Chapter 86. The Everlasting Feast Hall had a total of 3 floors and was decorated in an antique style. The first floor was an open dining room with more than 200 dining tables. The second floor was a private room with a total of 108 private rooms. It was spacious, bright, and comfortable. The third floor was the VIP area. The number of guests who were qualified to enter the third floor could be counted on one hand. As Tan Xiao arrived, the restaurant manager had already been notified and warmly greeted him. "Are you Mr. Tang? I'm the manager of the Everlasting Feast Hall, Chu Hanqing. The little boss has just informed me that the VIP lounge on the third floor is ready. You and your friends can dine there. Everything you need here is free of charge. Lead the way." Tan Xiao calmly nodded. Jia Ruidao looked a bit excited as he followed beside Tan Xiao and said with a smile, "Brother Tang, we're really basking in your glory today. You know, countless dignitaries and dignitaries who want to climb to the third floor are stopped by the security personnel here. I never thought that I would be able to climb to the third floor of the Everlasting Feast Hall." Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "It's just an external enjoyment. It's meaningless." Jia Ruidao forced a smile and said, "Everyone pursues different things. You can keep a normal mind when facing external things, but people like you are very rare." Tan Xiao thought for a moment and felt that Jia Ruidao's words were quite reasonable. Everyone has their own pursuits. Some pursue fame and fortune, some pursue power and sex, some pursue material enjoyment, and some pursue spiritual sustenance. Just like himself, he only pursued two things: to spend time with his mother and to cultivate. The third floor had a total of 18 rooms, each of which was nearly 200 square meters. Although the interior decoration was also antique, it was extremely luxurious. Even though Tan Xiao didn't have much research on antiques, he could see that there were many old objects inside. Along the river during the Qingming festival painting? Just as Jia Ruidao entered the room, he noticed the calligraphy and painting on the wall. After observing it for a moment, he immediately exclaimed out loud. The restaurant manager said with a smile, "Our boss once participated in an auction in the harbor area. He bought this calligraphy and painting in that auction. I heard that he spent 9 digits to bid for it." Tan Xiao's expression changed as he asked, "Have you seen your boss?" "I wasn't talking about your little boss." The restaurant manager nodded and said, "Of course. Because I was addicted to gambling, I lost everything and even lost my position as the CEO of a listed company. At that time, his family was separated and he didn't have enough to eat. It could be said that he was extremely down and out. Fortunately, I met boss. She paid off my debt, taught me martial arts, and let me work for her in the Everlasting Feast Hall. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years have passed." Tan Xiao asked, "What's your boss's name? How old is he?" "We can't easily reveal our boss's name to others," said the restaurant manager. "But her age? In the past 10 years, I've only seen her 4 times. When I first met her, she looked about 20 years old, but the last time I saw her 10 years ago, she also seemed to be 20 years old. Actually, I also find it strange. It's as if time doesn't leave any traces on her body. 20 years old? She looks almost the same as Gu Xiaoxue?" Tan Xiao frowned. The little girl he watched grow up was only 18 years old when she left him for the first time. Tan Xiao suddenly said, "Help me find a pen and a piece of paper." "Please wait a moment." The restaurant manager immediately informed Tan Xiao's request through the intercom and then put the menu in front of Tan Xiao and the others. When Tan Xiao and the others finished ordering, the pen and paper were handed to Tan Xiao. While waiting for the dishes to be served, Tang Xiao drew a portrait on the paper. What he drew was the appearance of his disciple in the immortal world. She was 18 years old, a flower-like age. Along with Tan Xiao's drawing, a vivid and lifelike portrait of a young girl was born. There was a beauty in the north. Her smile could topple a city, and her smile could topple a country. The girl in the painting had a sweet smile on her face, as if she had come to life. So beautiful! Jia Ruidao and his disciple, as well as the restaurant manager, were deeply attracted by the girl drawn by Tan Xiao. In a trance, they seemed to see a beautiful young girl, standing in front of them and smiling at them. "Take a look, isn't that her?" Tan Xiao looked at the restaurant manager and asked in a deep voice. The restaurant manager sobered up from his intoxication. His eyes reluctantly moved away from the drawing as he shook his head and said, "You drew a fairy maiden. Although our boss is also very beautiful, her appearance is completely different." "She isn't?" A trace of loss and relief rose in Tan Xiu's heart. He wanted to see his disciple, whom he had raised and taught respectfully. But he was afraid that he would be involved with those who betrayed him. Forget it. You go and do your work. All right. The restaurant manager complied and left the hall. Delicious delicacies were continuously served, as well as jars of wine were placed on the table. Two young and beautiful waiters didn't leave the hall. They poured wine for Tan Xiu, Jia Ruidao, and the others, and then sat on the sofa on the other side of the hall, waiting for Tan Xiu and the others to greet them. The wine is good. It was Tan Xiu's first time drinking wine since he returned to the modern era. He carefully tasted it and nodded in approval. He had drunk countless good wines, and he had a very high talent in winemaking. But this everlasting feast hall's wine was also good. Not bad? Just not bad? Jia Ruidao gulped down the wine in one gulp, showing an expression of wanting to continue. But when he heard Tan Xiu's words, he suddenly froze. He had lived for 60 years, yet this was the first time he had tasted such a delicious wine. How come Tan Xiu only gave it a not bad evaluation? His three disciples couldn't help but shake their heads upon hearing Tan Xiu's words. They were all wine lovers, and it was also their first time tasting such a good wine. Therefore, they secretly ridiculed Tan Xiu's evaluation. Brother Tang, this is not an ordinary wine. I dare say that if we were to order wine in the box on the second floor, it would definitely not be this wine. Although the wine provided in the box on the second floor is also good, it's far inferior compared to this. Jia Ruidao said with a smile. Tan Xiu raised his glass and said, "Drink more if you like it." Late at night, 12 o'clock. Tan Xiu, Jia Ruidao, and his disciples ate and drank to their heart's content as they directly left the restaurant. Since they didn't need to pay the bill, they saved a lot of money for Jia Ruidao and his disciples. It must be known that the cheapest meal in the box on the second floor would cost at least 100,000 yuan. Tonight, they had a sumptuous meal. Jia Ruidao secretly estimated that if he had to pay, he wouldn't be able to leave without at least 1,000,000 yuan. In the dim light of the night, 5 people were strolling on the shady forest trail. Occasionally, flying insects would linger around the dim lights on the roadside. Just as they were about to reach the parking lot, the road in front of them was blocked as mocking laughter entered their ears. "Oh, isn't this Grandmaster Jia Ruidao? You lost so much during the day. How come you still have the mood to come to the everlasting feast hall to drink at night? Don't tell me you want to drown your sorrows with wine?" There were a total of 12 people in front of them. The one who spoke was one of the 3 youths in front of them. Tan Xiu didn't know who he was, but Jia Ruidao and his 3 disciples knew him. He was their nemesis, Chen Kai, the famous hedonistic young master of Jingmen Island. Jia Ruidao took a step forward and coldly said, "Chen Kai, don't be insolent. We'll pay you back 100-fold for the humiliation you gave me before." Chen Kai burst into laughter and said, "Did I hear it wrong? Do you still have a chance to turn the tables? Tomorrow, I'll make you understand why the flowers are so red." "Ha! You," Jia Ruidao was furious. "Chen Kai, he's Jia Ruidao? A famous professional gambler?" A youth asked lightly. Chen Kai stared at Jia Ruidao provocatively. Then, with a flattering tone, he said, "Brother Chu, he's Jia Ruidao, the guy who almost lost his pants to me. The 3 guys behind him are all his disciples." "That's right, the youngest one is his son, a prodigal son of a bitch." The youth looked at Jia Ruidao as he lightly nodded and said, "Chen Kai, remember to leave a line for others. I'd like to see you later. If they bow their heads, I'll forget about this matter. That jade pendant is very good, I like it very much. It's mine later." Good. Consider it as a gift from me to you, Brother Chu." Chen Kai happily said. Jia Ruidao was stunned. He looked at Chen Kai and then at the youth. Suddenly, he flew into a rage and roared, "Chen Kai, you motherfucker! That jade pendant belongs to this old man's wife. I'll find a way to win it back. If you dare to give it to others, don't blame this old man for going all out against you." Chen Kai disdainfully said, "What I've won is mine. How I deal with it is none of your business." If you have the ability, then bring it on. This young master is not afraid of you. Chen Kai. The youth who spoke just now shouted in a low voice. Chen Kai shrunk his neck as he let out a hollow laugh and said, "Brother Chu, this old bastard is looking for trouble." Jia Ruidao's eyes turned blood red as blue veins protruded on his forehead. His eyes looked as though he could devour someone as he glared at Chen Kai and said, "I'll naturally win back what I've lost. Tomorrow, I'll make you look good tomorrow." The youth surnamed Chu looked at Jia Ruidao and lightly said, "Generally, I won't return the things I've obtained. If you want the jade pendant, look for me. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Chu Yi, from the imperial capital." Tan Xiao took a step forward as he looked at Chu Yi and said, "You just said that one should leave a line for others to meet again in the future. Since that jade pendant belongs to Jia Ruidao's deceased wife, I think you should give him a chance. If he can win it back tomorrow, the jade pendant will be returned to him. But if he loses tomorrow, we'll never mention this jade pendant again, and this bet will be completely over. How about it?" Chu Yi squinted his eyes as he sized up Tan Xiao. With a faint smile, he asked, "Who are you?" "Tan Xiao. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.